Picture yourself waking up in a stone chamber on a February morning in 1347. Your head throbs. Your throat feels like you've swallowed broken pottery. There's a slight fever making your skin prickle beneath the wool blanket. In 2025, you'd reach for ibuprofen, drink some water, maybe call in sick to work. But here in this medieval world, that simple headache and sore throat have just become a potential death sentence. Because the moment you mention your symptoms to anyone, the machinery of medieval medicine begins to turn, and you, my friend, are about to discover that the cure is often far worse than the disease. You probably won't survive what's coming next, not because your illness is particularly dangerous, but because the people who are about to help you operate under medical theories that are spectacularly, horrifyingly wrong. They believe your body is governed by 4 fluids that must remain in perfect balance. They think demons cause sneezing. They're convinced that drilling holes in skulls releases evil spirits, and that your urine can reveal the future. And they're about to apply all of this knowledge to your care with absolute confidence and medieval-grade sharp objects. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing how this community spans the globe from Tokyo to Toronto, from midnight listeners to dawn commuters. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The barber surgeon arrives at your bedside by mid-morning. In medieval society, physicians are expensive university-educated men who rarely touch patients directly. They diagnose from a distance, consult books, and prescribe treatments. But the actual bloody work that falls to the barber surgeons, men who cut hair, pull teeth, and perform surgery in the same shop where they give shaves. The sign outside his establishment is a red and white striped pole representing blood and bandages. You've walked past it 100 times. You never imagined you'd need his services for a headache. He enters carrying a leather bag that clinks with metal instruments. His apron is stained with old blood, nobody's blood in particular, just the accumulated evidence of his trade. He doesn't wash his hands. The germ theory of disease won't be discovered for another 500 years. Right now, in 1347, illness is caused by bad air, imbalanced humours, divine punishment, or malevolent spirits. Bacteria and viruses are as invisible to medieval understanding as they are to the naked eye. The barber surgeon approaches and immediately takes your wrist, feeling your pulse. But he's not counting beats per minute like a modern nurse. He's assessing the quality of your pulse. Is it strong or weak, fast or slow, rough or smooth? Each variation tells him something about which of your 4 humours is out of balance. Your fever suggests an excess of yellow bile, the hot and dry humour associated with summer and fire. Your headache indicates that bad humours are pressing against the inside of your skull trying to escape. He leans close and sniffs your breath. He examines your tongue, pulling it out with his bare fingers to check its coating. He presses his palm against your forehead to gauge the fever. Then he asks the question that seals your fate. Have you urinated this morning? When you nod, he demands to see it. Someone brings the chamber pot, and he holds it up to the light streaming through the narrow window, swirling your urine like a sommelier examining fine wine. The colour is slightly dark, he observes. Definitely too much yellow bile. The cloudiness suggests corrupt humours. You need immediate intervention. What happens next will make you wish you'd just stayed in bed and suffered through the headache in silence. The barber surgeon opens his leather bag and removes a small brass bowl and a peculiar blade, thin, sharp, and slightly curved. It's a phlegm designed specifically for opening veins. because the primary treatment for your headache, your fever, your sore throat, indeed, for almost any ailment in medieval medicine is bloodletting. The theory is simple, elegant, and completely wrong. Your body contains too much blood, or the blood has become corrupted, and removing some will restore balance to your humours. Modern medicine understands that blood is precious, that losing too much can send you into shock, that your body needs every red blood cell to carry oxygen to your tissues. Medieval medicine sees blood as something you have too much of, something that goes bad like milk left in the sun. He ties a leather strap around your upper arm, tightening it until your veins bulge. He selects a vein at the crook of your elbow, the very same spot where modern nurses draw blood, though they take a few millilitres, and he's about to take several cups. He positions the phlegm against your skin, and with a practiced tap from a small wooden mallet drives the blade into your vein. Blood wells up, immediately dark and steady, streaming into the brass bowl. You watch your blood flow out, feeling a strange lightheadedness that has nothing to do with your original headache. The barber surgeon watches carefully, judging when enough has been taken. But enough is a subjective measurement based on faulty theory. Some medical texts recommend removing blood until the patient faints. Others suggest continuing until the blood changes colour, becoming lighter and cleaner. Historians still argue whether medieval bloodletting killed more people than it helped, but the math is grim. Removing a pint of blood from someone who's already weakened by illness is rarely beneficial. After what feels like an eternity, he decides you've given enough. He removes the strap, presses a cloth against the wound, and bandages your arm with strips of linen. You're told to rest, to avoid excitement, to eat warming foods, to rebuild your blood. The headache. Still there, the fever unchanged, but according to medieval medical theory, you've just received the best possible care. Welcome to medieval medicine, where the treatments are confidently administered and horrifyingly ineffective. The next morning your headache persists, but now you're sneezing. Just a few times, nothing dramatic, just your body's natural response to some minor irritation in your nasal passages. In the modern world, you'd recognise this as allergies, or the early stage of a cold caused by a rhinovirus that your immune system will handle in a few days. But you sneeze 3 times in front of the household chaplain during morning prayers and his face goes pale. He makes the sign of the cross. Everyone in the chapel turns to stare at you. Because in medieval understanding, sneezing isn't just a bodily function, it's a potential sign of demonic influence. The medieval mind doesn't separate the physical from the spiritual the way modern thinking does. Your body and soul are intertwined, and an illness in one can indicate corruption in the other. The ancient belief persists that when you sneeze, your soul briefly leaves your body through your nose, creating a dangerous moment when demons can slip inside. This is why people say, "God bless you," after a sneeze. Originally, it wasn't politeness. It was spiritual protection, a verbal shield against demonic invasion during your moment of vulnerability. The chaplain approaches after prayers conclude, his expression grave. He asks whether you've been experiencing dark thoughts, whether you've had nightmares, whether you've felt any urges to blaspheme or commit sins. You're confused, you just have a cold. But he's conducting a spiritual diagnostic examination as serious as any physician's physical assessment. Your sneezing combined with yesterday's headache and fever suggests to him a pattern illness entering through spiritual weakness demons, taking advantage of a soul's temporary departure during the sneeze. He prescribes immediate spiritual intervention. You're given a small cloth bag to wear around your neck, filled with dried herbs, rue wormwood, and vervain plants believed to repel evil spirits. You're instructed to recite specific prayers every hour, asking St. Blaise, patron saint of throat ailments, and St. Agatha, who protects against diseases, for intercession. The chaplain sprinkles holy water on you, making the sign of the cross on your forehead, lips, and chest. If you were wealthy enough, he might recommend a pilgrimage to a saint's shrine, or the purchase of a holy relic to keep by your bedside. But here's where medieval medicine gets interesting, and by interesting I mean terrifyingly complicated. Because your sneeze doesn't just concern the chaplain. The household's unofficial wise woman and elderly servant who's treated ailments for 40 years has her own interpretation. She believes your sneeze indicates that your head humours are too cold and wet, creating excess phlegm that irritates your nasal passages. Her solution: a poultice of mustard seed and garlic ground into a paste and applied to your forehead and the back of your neck. The burning sensation, she explains, will draw out the cold, wet humours and replace them with hot, dry energy. The mustard garlic paste burns like fire against your skin. Your eyes water. The smell is overpowering, a combination of sharp mustard and pungent garlic that seems to penetrate directly into your sinuses. Within minutes, your skin beneath the poultice turns red and begins to blister. This, the wise woman assures you, is good. The blisters prove that the bad humours are being drawn to the surface. Modern dermatology would call this a chemical burn. Medieval medicine calls it healing. Meanwhile, the local physician, if your household can afford his consultation, might have yet another explanation for your sneezing. He believes it's caused by corrupt air miasma, the invisible poisonous vapours that rise from swamps, graveyards, and piles of rotting organic matter. Cities in medieval Europe are extraordinarily smelly places: open sewers, animal waste in the streets, butchers' offal pits, tanneries processing hides with urine and feces. The theory of miasma suggests that breathing this foul air corrupts your internal humours, causing illness. Your sneeze is your body's attempt to expel the poisoned air. His treatment: fumigation. You're instructed to inhale smoke from burning aromatic substances: frankincense, myrrh, juniper berries, rosemary, and sometimes more exotic imports like aloe wood if your household is wealthy. A small brazier is brought to your bedside filled with hot coals. The aromatics are sprinkled onto the coals, producing thick, fragrant smoke. You're told to lean over the brazier with a cloth draped over your head, creating a tent that traps the smoke, and breathe deeply. The idea is that good-smelling smoke will drive out bad-smelling miasma, restoring balance to your internal atmosphere. You inhale the smoke until you're coughing, and your eyes are streaming tears. The frankincense scratches at your throat. The myrrh tastes bitter in the back of your mouth. But this is medicine. It's supposed to be unpleasant. Historians still argue whether aromatic fumigation had any real benefits, though modern research suggests some of these plants do have mild antimicrobial properties. Of course, any benefits are vastly outweighed by the lung irritation from inhaling smoke directly, but nobody in 1347 knows that. So now you're lying in bed with blistered skin under a mustard garlic poultice, a bag of dried herbs around your neck, lungs raw from inhaling smoke, and instructions to pray every hour for divine intervention. And you still have a headache and a runny nose. But at least 3 different medical traditions have addressed your sneezing with absolute confidence. The truly frightening part: this is considered basic care. These are the simple everyday treatments for common symptoms. Nobody's even broken out the serious medical interventions yet. That phlegm the barber surgeon used yesterday, that was just the appetizer. The medieval medical toolkit contains instruments and procedures that would look at home in a torture chamber, and they're all used with the sincere belief that they're helping. Your sneeze, that tiny involuntary explosion of air from your nostrils, has triggered a cascade of medieval medical responses, each one logical within its own framework of understanding, each one potentially more harmful than helpful. The demon theory leads to spiritual treatments. The humour theory leads to physical interventions designed to restore balance. The miasma theory leads to fumigation and air purification. And all of them together create a medical experience that's simultaneously fascinating and horrifying. You drift off to sleep that night, skin burning under the poultice, the smell of garlic in your nostrils, the weight of the herb bag against your chest, prayers half remembered on your lips. Tomorrow, if your symptoms persist, the treatments will escalate. But for now, you've survived day 2 of medieval medical care. That might actually be an achievement worth celebrating. By day 3, you're beginning to understand the fundamental principle that governs every medical decision being made about your body, the theory of the 4 humours. This isn't some fringe belief held by a few eccentric healers. This is the absolute foundation of medieval medicine, the bedrock upon which every diagnosis and treatment rests. It originates with ancient Greek physicians, particularly Hippocrates and Galen, whose writings have been copied, translated, and reverently studied for over 1,000 years. To doubt the 4 humours theory in medieval Europe is like doubting gravity in the modern world. It's not just wrong, it's incomprehensible. Here's how it works. Your body contains 4 essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each humour corresponds to an element, a season, a temperature, and a moisture level. Blood is hot and wet like air associated with spring. Phlegm is cold and wet like water linked to winter. Yellow bile is hot and dry like fire connected to summer. Black bile is cold and dry like earth tied to autumn. When these 4 humours exist in perfect balance, you're healthy. When they fall out of balance, too much of one, too little of another, you become ill. Your personality, your appearance, even your destiny are determined by which humour dominates your constitution. Someone with excess blood is sanguine, cheerful, sociable, ruddy-faced. Too much phlegm makes you phlegmatic, calm, sluggish, pale. An abundance of yellow bile creates a choleric temperament, angry, ambitious, yellowish complexion. Black bile in excess produces melancholy, sad, analytical, dark-featured. This isn't psychology. This is physiology as medieval medicine understands it. You aren't depressed because of life circumstances. You're melancholic because black bile has flooded your system. The physician examining you now places his fingers on your wrist again, but this time he's conducting a more thorough pulse reading. He's not just feeling the rhythm, he's interpreting a complex language. A strong bounding pulse indicates too much blood. A weak thready pulse suggests insufficient blood or excess phlegm. A rapid hard pulse means yellow bile dominance. An irregular, sluggish pulse points to black bile corruption. He presses different spots on your wrist, believing each location corresponds to different organs: the liver, the heart, the lungs, the spleen. Your continued headache, he determines, stems from excess yellow bile rising to your head. The fever confirms it. Yellow bile is hot by nature. Your sneezing indicates that phlegm is also accumulating, trying to cool down the excess heat, but creating its own problems. You've become a walking humoral imbalance, a body at war with itself, and the physician's job is to restore equilibrium through aggressive intervention. The treatments prescribed to rebalance your humours are based on the principle of opposites. If you have too much hot, dry, yellow bile, you need cold, wet treatments. You're given a diet of cooling foods, cucumber, lettuce, fish, barley, water. You're forbidden warming foods like red meat, wine, or anything spiced with pepper or ginger. Your chamber must be kept cool and slightly damp. The physician even recommends that you think calm, peaceful thoughts, because angry or excited thinking generates more yellow bile. But diet and environment alone won't work fast enough. You need direct humoral drainage, and that means more bloodletting. The barber surgeon returns, but this time he's not opening the vein in your arm. Different symptoms require blood to be drawn from different locations. For a headache, the ideal spot is the temporal vein, the one that runs along your temple. It's closer to the source of the problem, you see. Remove blood near the head, and you directly reduce the humeral pressure causing your pain. He produces the phlegm again, smaller this time, designed for the delicate veins of the head. You feel the blade puncture the vein at your temple, and blood begins to trickle down the side of your face. It's a strange sensation, warm liquid running past your ear, soaking into your hair. The barber surgeon collects it in a small cup, examining the colour and consistency like a vintner assessing wine. "Too dark," he mutters. "Definitely too much bile mixed in." He lets more flow. Historians still argue whether the four humours actually correspond to anything real in human physiology. Some suggest blood represents the cardiovascular system phlegm, the lymphatic system, yellow bile, the digestive secretions and black bile, perhaps the darker aspects of bile, or even something imaginary. Others argue it's pure fantasy, a pre-scientific attempt to create a unified theory of medicine without any basis in biological reality. But here's the thing, within its own logical framework, it's internally consistent. The theory explains everything personality disease treatment in one elegant system. You're living inside that system now, and the system demands more intervention. After the bloodletting, you're given an emetic, a potion designed to make you vomit. Purging excess bile through the mouth is considered therapeutic. The mixture tastes absolutely vile, made from mustard seeds, radish juice, and something bitter the apothecary won't name. Within minutes, you're retching, violently emptying your stomach into a basin. Each heave, you're told, removes corrupt humours. Modern medicine would point out that you're just becoming dehydrated and exhausted. Medieval medicine sees successful purging. By the end of day 3, you've been bled twice, made to vomit, fed a restricted diet, fumigated, plastered with burning poultices, and instructed in prayer. Your original headache still there. But according to the four humours theory, you're receiving exactly the right treatment. The theory isn't wrong, you just need more of the same medicine. That's the truly terrifying thing about living in a pre-scientific medical world. The treatments don't work, but the system explains away every failure and demands escalation. The barber surgeon visits you for the 3rd time in 4 days, and this time he brings a colleague. 2 men in blood-stained aprons standing at your bedside is never a good sign in medieval medicine. They confer in low voices, occasionally glancing at you like butchers evaluating a difficult cut of meat. Your headache hasn't improved despite the bloodletting from your arm and temple. Your fever continues to spike each evening. The sneezing has evolved into a persistent cough. By medieval diagnostic standards, you're getting worse, which means the treatments haven't been aggressive enough. The senior surgeon makes his pronouncement you need therapeutic bleeding from multiple sites simultaneously. This is called revulsion, the practice of drawing bad humours away from the affected area by creating alternative drainage points. If the problem is in your head, they'll bleed you from points far from your head to redirect the flow of corrupt humours. It's based on a hydraulic model of the body, imagining your blood vessels as a network of pipes that can be strategically opened to relieve pressure and redirect flow. They position you sitting upright in bed, bare-chested despite the February cold. The first surgeon takes your left foot, the second your right. They're going to open veins in both feet, simultaneously letting blood drain downward, theoretically pulling the excess humours away from your head. You watch as they tie cords around your ankles, tightening until the veins on the tops of your feet bulge. 2 phlegms appear, 2 practiced hands position them, and with synchronized movements, both blades puncture your feet. Blood flows from both feet into brass bowls positioned on the floor. The sensation is bizarre. A warm wetness between your toes, a gradual lightheadedness that seems to start in your skull and work downward through your body. The surgeons watch the blood carefully, looking for changes in colour that might indicate when the corrupt humours have been sufficiently drained. Modern medicine understands that blood colour changes simply due to oxygenation levels. Arterial blood is bright red. Venous blood is darker. Medieval medicine sees these colour variations as proof that different humours are being expelled. They take more this time than they did from your arm. Much more. The bowls fill halfway, then more. You're feeling genuinely faint now, your vision narrowing at the edges, a ringing starting in your ears. But the surgeons are pleased with their work. The blood is running clearer now. They observe lighter in colour, less thick. This means the yellow bile concentration is decreasing. They're winning the battle against your humoral imbalance. You're on the verge of passing out from blood loss. But in their assessment, the treatment is succeeding beautifully. When they finally decide you've given enough, they stanch the wounds with cloth soaked in wine. Alcohol's antiseptic properties are recognized, though they believe it works by balancing cold against heat rather than killing bacteria. Your feet are wrapped in linen bandages and you're instructed not to walk for at least a day. You're too weak to walk anyway. You collapse back against the pillows, skin pale, pulse thready and rapid, experiencing what modern doctors would recognize as the early stages of hypovolemic shock. But wait, there's more. Because bloodletting alone isn't the only method of humoral drainage. The surgeons produce small brass cups, each about the size of a shot glass with a rounded bottom. These are cupping vessels, and they're about to introduce you to another standard medieval procedure. The cups are heated over a candle flame until the air inside expands and the metal is almost too hot to touch. Then with quick precision each cup is inverted and pressed against your skin, your shoulders, your upper back, your chest. As the air inside cools, it contracts, creating suction. The cups pull your skin upward into the vessel, creating a tight seal. You can feel your flesh being drawn up, the pressure increasing the skin stretching. After a few minutes, the surgeon takes a small blade and makes tiny incisions in your skin beneath each cup, just enough to break the surface to let blood seep out. This is called wet cupping, as opposed to dry cupping, which only creates suction without bleeding. The cups remain attached now, slowly filling with blood and lymphatic fluid, pulling bad humours directly through your skin. You sit there with a dozen cups attached to your torso, each one creating a circular bruise of trapped blood beneath your skin, each one drawing fluid through the small cuts. It doesn't hurt as much as you'd expect. The suction creates a strange, numbing sensation. But it looks horrific. Your skin is mottled with angry red circles, blood pooling under the surface fluid, weeping from the incisions. The surgeons leave the cups in place for what feels like hours, but is probably only 20 minutes, periodically checking the fluid levels. When they finally remove the cups, your skin is covered with perfectly circular bruises that will last for weeks. Each site is cleaned with wine and bandaged. You're told that this combination treatment, simultaneous bleeding from the feet and wet cupping on the torso, represents the most advanced humoral rebalancing therapy available. Physicians in Paris and Bologna use these exact techniques. You're receiving university-level medical care. You should feel fortunate. You feel like you've been attacked by vampires. Historians still argue about how many people died from excessive bloodletting versus dying from the original illnesses. The math is complicated because medieval record-keeping is spotty, and cause of death was often attributed to God's will rather than medical intervention. But modern analysis of historical bloodletting practices suggests that removing large quantities of blood from already weakened patients probably killed thousands, maybe tens of thousands, across medieval Europe. You're now dangerously anemic, covered in wounds, barely able to lift your head, all while your original cold virus continues its natural 7-day course, completely unaffected by anything that's been done to you. Welcome to day 4 of medieval medical treatment. Try not to die before tomorrow. Morning arrives on day 5, and before you're even fully conscious, someone is shaking a chamber pot under your nose. Not metaphorically, literally under your nose. The physician has returned, and his first order of business is uroscopy, the medieval practice of diagnosing illness through urine examination. This isn't a simple glance at colour. This is an elaborate ritual involving observation, smell, and yes, occasionally taste. You're about to discover that your bodily waste is considered a window into your soul, or at least into your humoral balance. The physician holds your chamber pot up to the morning light streaming through the window, tilting it at various angles. He's looking for colour first. The spectrum ranges from clear white to deep reddish black, with 20 different diagnostic shades identified in medical texts. Your urine this morning is dark amber clouded with sediment. He swirls it gently, watching how the sediment moves. Does it sink quickly or float? Does it form patterns? Each observation feeds into his diagnostic calculations. Next comes the smell test. He brings the pot close to his face and inhales deeply, his expression thoughtful. Sweet-smelling urine indicates one type of humoral imbalance, acrid, another foul-smelling, yet another. Your urine smells strongly of the garlic poultice that's been burning your skin, which he notes with satisfaction. It means the treatment is working. The corrupt humours are being expelled. Modern medicine would simply note that volatile sulfur compounds from garlic are being excreted through your kidneys. Medieval medicine sees proof of therapeutic success. The physician produces a specialized flask called a matula, a clear glass vessel with a rounded bottom and a narrow neck specifically designed for urine examination. He pours your sample into it, holding it up again, examining it from every angle like a jeweller appraising a diamond. Medieval medical texts contain elaborate charts showing different urine colours and what they signify. White and clear means excess phlegm. Reddish means too much blood. Golden yellow is ideal. Dark brown or black indicates dangerous black bile accumulation. Your dark amber falls somewhere in the problematic range. But here's where it gets truly medieval. Some physicians believe that different sections of the urine in the flask correspond to different organs. The foam on top relates to the head and brain. The upper layer connects to the chest and lungs. The middle section represents the liver and digestive organs. The sediment at the bottom corresponds to the bladder and reproductive system. By examining each layer, the physician can supposedly diagnose problems throughout your entire body from a single urine sample. Your physician peers intently at the flask, muttering observations. The cloudiness in the middle section suggests liver involvement, excess yellow bile production. The sediment at the bottom indicates that your kidneys are working overtime to expel the corrupt humours, which is good. The slight reddish tint throughout means there's still too much blood despite all the bleeding. He makes notes on a small piece of parchment recording his findings. These observations will determine today's treatment plan. Now comes the part that makes modern people squeamish. Some medieval physicians following ancient traditions would actually taste the urine. Not yours today, thankfully. But the practice exists and is considered scientifically valid. Sweet-tasting urine, what we now know, indicates diabetes was called honey urine and considered a sign of corrupted blood sugar humours. Bitter urine indicated bile problems. The physician's willingness to taste bodily fluids was seen as dedication to diagnostic accuracy, not as something disgusting. It's all just humoral chemistry after all. Historians still argue about how accurate uroscopy actually was. Some point out that certain observations, dark urine in dehydration, sweet urine in diabetes, cloudy urine in infections, do correlate with real medical conditions. Others note that the elaborate interpretive framework led to wildly inaccurate diagnoses based on coincidental observations. A physician might correctly observe that someone's urine is unusually dark, then completely incorrectly conclude that this means their spleen is producing excess black bile, and prescribe treatments that make everything worse. Based on your urine examination, the physician prescribes a new intervention, diuretic herbs, to increase urination and speed the expulsion of corrupt humours. You're given a tea made from dandelion root, juniper berries and parsley, all of which do actually increase urine production, though not because they're balancing humours. You'll be urinating constantly now, which means more frequent uroscopy examinations, which means the physician can track his treatment's progress by observing how your urine changes. But the urine examination reveals something else that concerns him: tiny thread-like strands floating in the sample. To the medieval eye, these could be worms or the beginning stages of worm formation. Intestinal parasites are incredibly common in medieval Europe: poor sanitation, unwashed food, contaminated water. Almost everyone has some type of parasitic infection. The theory holds that worms generate spontaneously from corrupt humours, particularly in the digestive tract where food rots and ferments. Those floating strands in your urine might just be mucus threads or protein casts from your stressed kidneys, but the physician sees potential worm activity. This diagnosis triggers a whole new treatment protocol. You're given a vermifuge, a potion designed to kill and expel intestinal worms. The mixture is breathtakingly bitter, made from wormwood, tansy and rue steeped in wine. These herbs are genuinely toxic in high doses, which is the point. The idea is to poison the worms without killing the host. You down the foul-tasting drink while the physician watches approvingly. Within hours you'll be experiencing intestinal cramping and diarrhea as the herbs work their way through your system. The physician will examine your stool as carefully as he examined your urine, looking for evidence of expelled worms. You've now been diagnosed based on your urine's colour, clarity, smell, sediment patterns, and imaginary layer-by-organ correspondence. Your treatment plan has been adjusted accordingly, and somewhere in the back of your feverish mind, you're beginning to realize that medieval medicine's certainty is inversely proportional to its accuracy. By day 6, your headache has evolved into something more severe, a pounding, relentless pain that throbs with every heartbeat radiating from deep inside your skull. You mention this to the physician during his morning visit, and his expression grows serious. He presses his fingers against various points on your head, feeling for heat, for swelling, for any abnormal pulsing. He asks whether you're experiencing visions, hearing voices, or having trouble remembering things. When you describe the pain as feeling like pressure building inside your head, he nods gravely. He's heard this before. He knows exactly what's wrong. The evil humours, he explains, have become trapped inside your skull. They're accumulating, pressing against the inside of your cranium, and they need to be released. Bloodletting from external veins hasn't been sufficient. The cupping drew some pressure away, but not enough. What you need now is a more direct intervention, a procedure that will create an opening for the trapped vapours and corrupt fluids to escape. What you need is trepanation drilling a hole in your skull. Let that sink in for a moment. You have a headache, possibly a sinus infection, or just a persistent cold that's causing inflammation and pressure. The medieval solution is to bore a hole through your skull bone and into your brain cavity. This isn't some experimental procedure performed by a mad fringe doctor in a dungeon. This is legitimate mainstream medieval medicine performed by trained surgeons, documented in medical texts practiced across Europe for centuries. Trepanation is so common that archaeologists regularly find medieval skulls with neat circular holes cut into them, many showing signs of healing, proving the patient survived the procedure. The surgeon arrives with his instruments, a set of specialized tools that look like a carpenter's drill bits but designed for bone. There's the trephine, a circular saw with a central spike to keep it centered. There's the terebra, a T-shaped drill that bores straight down. There are elevators and forceps for removing bone fragments and scrapers for smoothing the edges of the hole once it's made. He lays these instruments out on a cloth beside your bed, with the casual efficiency of someone who's done this many times before. You're not given anesthesia because general anesthesia doesn't exist yet. The best you get is strong wine, several cups of it drunk quickly to dull the senses. Some surgeons might add mandrake root or opium poppy extract if they have access to such expensive substances, but most patients face skull surgery with nothing more than alcohol and prayer. You're also given a leather strap to bite down on both, to muffle your screams, and to give you something to focus on besides the sensation of metal grinding through your skull. They shave a patch of your hair away, cleaning the area with wine. The surgeon marks a spot on your skull with charcoal, usually the temple, or just above the ear locations believed to be optimal for releasing trapped head humours. He selects the trephine positions the central spike against your skull and begins to turn the circular blade. You feel pressure first, then a strange grinding vibration that seems to resonate through your entire skeleton. The sound is worse than the pain initially, a scraping, scratching noise that you can hear from inside your own head. The blade cuts through the outer layer of skull bone, creating a circular groove. The surgeon works slowly, applying steady pressure periodically, stopping to check his progress. He's carved through the outer table of compact bone and is now working through the spongy diplo layer between the inner and outer skull surfaces. Blood seeps from the wound, mixing with bone dust, creating a paste that the surgeon's assistant wipes away with cloths. You're biting down on the leather so hard your jaw aches, tears streaming down your face, but you're trying not to move because any sudden motion could cause the drill to slip. As the blade penetrates deeper, reaching the inner table of bone, the final layer before the brain's protective membranes, the surgeon becomes extremely cautious. Pierce too deep and he'll cut into the dura mater, the tough membrane covering the brain, potentially causing hemorrhage or infection. The goal is to remove a disc of bone completely, while leaving that membrane intact. He can tell when he's close by, the way the bone gives under pressure, becoming thin and slightly flexible. Finally, with a subtle change in resistance, the circular piece of bone comes free. The surgeon lifts it out with forceps, revealing the dura mater beneath a pale, glistening membrane that pulses gently with your heartbeat. He examines the bone disc, noting its thickness and any unusual discoloration that might indicate disease. Then he peers into the hole he's created, looking for signs of pus blood clots or any visible evidence of the corrupt humours that were supposedly causing your headache. Historians still argue about whether trepanation ever provided actual medical benefit. In cases of skull fractures or brain hemorrhages creating genuine pressure, removing a piece of bone might have relieved compression and saved lives. But for most headaches caused by sinus infections, migraines, tension, or simple colds, drilling a hole achieved nothing except creating a massive infection risk. Yet the survival rate was surprisingly high. Medieval skulls show healed trepanation sites, proving many patients lived through the procedure and recovered, though whether they recovered because of the surgery or despite it remains debatable. You now have a hole in your skull the size of a coin. The surgeon packs it with linen soaked in honey, a natural antimicrobial that actually does help prevent infection, and bandages your head thoroughly. You're told to rest completely to avoid excitement or strong emotions, and to pray for successful healing. The hole might eventually be covered with a silver or gold plate if you're wealthy, or simply allowed to heal over with scar tissue if you're not. Your headache, ironically, hasn't improved at all, but according to medieval medical theory, the treatment is sound. A week into your illness, word spreads through the town that plague has been spotted 2 villages away. Suddenly, your persistent cough and fever take on terrifying new significance. The physician stops visiting. The barber surgeon makes excuses. Even the servants begin avoiding your chamber. But one figure does arrive at your door, and the sight of him through your fevered haze is somehow both reassuring and nightmarish. The plague doctor dressed in his infamous beaked mask and long leather coat. The plague doctor's costume is one of the most recognizable images from medieval medicine, though it's actually more of an early modern invention refined during the plague outbreaks of the 17th century. But similar protective gear existed in your 14th century world. The bird-like beak serves a specific purpose. According to miasma theory, it's stuffed with aromatic substances like dried flowers, herbs, camphor and vinegar-soaked sponges. The idea is that these pleasant smells will protect the doctor from the poisonous miasma that supposedly causes plague by purifying the air before it reaches his lungs. The beak gives him about 6 inches of distance between his nose and potential infection sources, which provides exactly 0 actual protection against Yersinia pestis bacteria transmitted by flea bites. But nobody knows about bacteria yet. The plague doctor genuinely believes his herb-stuffed beak is a scientifically sound protective measure. He also wears glass goggles to protect his eyes from corrupted air, thick leather gloves, and a floor-length waxed coat that can be cleaned. The full ensemble makes him look like a humanoid crow, and when he enters your chamber, candlelight reflecting off those glass eyepieces, you understand why some people think he's death personified. He approaches your bed, cautiously breathing through his beak with a whistling sound. He examines you from a distance first, looking for the telltale signs of plague buboes, the swollen lymph nodes that give bubonic plague its name appearing in the groin, armpits or neck. He checks for dark spots on your skin, the hemorrhagic patches that earned plague the name Black Death. He asks about your symptoms using a long wooden pointer to indicate where you should touch your own body to show him where it hurts, maintaining his distance. You don't have plague. You have a bad cold that's been made infinitely worse by a week of bloodletting skull drilling and various toxic treatments. But the plague doctor can't be certain. He prescribes preventive measures based on the best medical understanding of 1347. First, your chamber must be fumigated even more aggressively than before. Enormous amounts of aromatic smoke are generated, rosemary, juniper, and laurel burning in braziers, until the room is so thick with smoke you can barely see. You're coughing constantly now, but this is considered therapeutic. The good-smelling smoke is fighting the bad-smelling miasma. Next, the plague doctor prescribes a protective potion. You must drink 3 times daily a mixture called theriac or treacle, considered the universal antidote to poison and disease. The recipe varies, but typically includes dozens of ingredients: herbs, spices, viper, flesh opium, and wine, all mixed together in proportions that supposedly create a perfect counteragent to any poison. The version you're given tastes indescribably bad, a muddy mixture that coats your throat and makes you gag. It's also fairly useless against plague, though the opium content does at least dull pain and induce drowsiness, which might be considered palliative care. The plague doctor also recommends that you carry a pomander, a perforated metal ball filled with aromatic substances, or hold a cloth soaked in vinegar to your nose whenever anyone else enters the room. The theory is that you're emanating poisonous vapors that could infect others, and these pleasant smells will neutralize your dangerous exhalations. So now you're lying in bed with a hole in your skull covered in bloodletting wounds, choking on smoke, clutching a vinegar-soaked rag to your face, and drinking opium-laced viper flesh wine. Medieval medicine is really pulling out all the stops. But here's the darkly fascinating part: if you actually had plague, none of this would matter. The plague doctor's protective costume, his aromatic treatments, his theriac potion, all completely ineffective against a bacterial infection transmitted by fleas. Historians still argue about exactly how many people the Black Death killed, but estimates range from 30 to 60% of Europe's population. The plague doctors, for all their dramatic costumes and confident interventions, could do essentially nothing to stop it. They could lance buboes to drain pus, which sometimes helped and sometimes spread infection. They could offer comfort and record deaths, but they couldn't cure plague any more than they could cure your common cold. The plague doctor leaves you with strict instructions: remain in isolation, continue the fumigation drink, the theriac pray constantly, and prepare your soul just in case. He marks your door with a cross in chalk, not because you're confirmed to have plague, but as a warning that illness is present inside. Neighbours cross to the other side of the street when passing your house. The local priest arrives to take your confession just in case you don't survive the night. You're not dying from disease, you're dying from treatment, but nobody can tell the difference. That night, lying in your smoke-filled chamber, head throbbing where they drilled into your skull wounds from bloodletting, still seeping, you have a moment of clarity. You would have been better off doing absolutely nothing. If you just stayed in bed that first day with your headache and let your body fight off the cold naturally, you'd probably be recovering by now. Instead, you've been systematically weakened by every intervention designed to help you. But you can't say that out loud. Questioning medical authority is tantamount to questioning God's order. And besides, the plague doctor's bird mask is really quite convincing. By day 8, one of your bloodletting wounds has become infected. The incision on your temple where they drew blood for your headache is now red, swollen and weeping yellowish pus. In the modern world, this would mean antibiotics, antiseptic cleaning, perhaps a topical antibiotic ointment. In medieval medicine, it means cauterization, the therapeutic application of red-hot metal to your infected flesh. The barber surgeon returns with an iron rod and a brazier of glowing coals, and you're about to learn that medieval doctors genuinely believe burning you is healing you. The theory behind cauterization is elegantly simple and completely brutal. Fire is the hottest, driest element associated with purification and transformation. Infection represents corrupt, cold, wet humours festering in your tissue. Applying extreme heat will dry out the wetness, purify the corruption, and seal the wound closed, preventing further humoral leakage. It's logical within the 4 humours framework. It's also going to hurt more than anything you've experienced so far, and you've already had a hole drilled in your skull. The barber surgeon prepares his cautery iron in the brazier, heating it until the tip glows orange-red. He's heating it to approximately 800 degrees Fahrenheit, though of course he's not measuring temperature scientifically, he's judging by colour and experience. Too cool and it won't cauterize effectively. Too hot and it might burn deeper than intended. He's looking for that perfect cherry red glow that indicates optimal therapeutic burning temperature. You watch the iron heating and understand with perfect clarity that he's about to press that glowing metal against your face. There's no anesthesia for this either. You're given the leather strap to bite again, and a servant holds your head still against the pillow. The barber surgeon approaches with the glowing iron, moving quickly now, because the metal cools rapidly once removed from the coals. He positions it carefully over the infected wound, taking aim, and then presses it firmly against your temple. The sound comes first, a sizzling hiss like meat hitting a hot pan. Then the smell your own flesh burning, a nauseating, sweet, acrid odour that fills the room. Finally the pain arrives, and it's beyond description. The sensation is pure fire boring directly into your skull. The iron stays in contact for only 2 or 3 seconds, any longer risks burning through to the bone, but those seconds stretch into eternity. You're screaming into the leather strap, your body trying involuntarily to jerk away, held firmly in place by the servant's hands. Tears stream from your eyes. Your heart races so fast you think it might burst. And then finally the iron is withdrawn, leaving behind a circular brand where the infected wound used to be. The cauterized flesh is black and charred at the center, angry red around the edges. A small amount of steam rises from the wound. The pus and infection are gone, burned away along with healthy tissue nerve endings and your will to live. The barber surgeon examines his work with satisfaction. The wound is now sealed, he explains. The corrupt humours can no longer seep out, and the purifying fire has killed whatever foul influences were causing the infection. He's absolutely right that burning tissue at 800 degrees kills bacteria, it also kills everything else in the immediate area. But cauterization isn't just for infected wounds, it's used for almost everything. Got a deep cut that won't stop bleeding. Cauterize it. Amputating a limb. Cauterize the stump, internal pain that won't respond to other treatments. Cauterize the skin over the affected area to draw out the bad humours. Medieval medical texts describe cauterization points all over the body for different conditions, cauteries for headaches, for stomach pains, for joint problems, for hemorrhoids. There are specialized cautery irons in different shapes pointed for precise burns, flat for larger areas, curved for following the contours of the body. Historians still argue about whether cauterization was more harmful or helpful overall. In cases of severe bleeding, searing blood vessels closed probably saved lives even if it created horrible scarring. For amputations, cauterization prevented immediate blood loss, though it often led to worse infections than leaving the wound to heal naturally. For most internal ailments where burning the skin was supposed to affect underlying organs, it accomplished nothing except adding burn trauma to existing problems. The truly mind-bending aspect is that patients accepted this. After the initial agony, many reported feeling better, not because the cauterization addressed their underlying illness, but because the trauma of being burned triggered endorphin release and shock responses that temporarily masked other pains. The human body's crisis management systems would activate adrenaline, endorphins, cortisol, creating a temporary state where the original headache or infected wound genuinely hurt less. The patient would interpret this as the treatment working. The barber surgeon would chalk up another success, and the cycle would continue. Your temple now bears a circular burn scar that you'll carry for the rest of your life. The infection is gone, killed, along with about a 1/4-inch diameter of your face. The wound will take weeks to heal, forming a thick keloid scar that pulls at the surrounding skin. In a society where facial scarring is common from disease accidents, violence, and medical procedures, you'll barely stand out. Cautery scars are marks of survival proof that you were sick enough to need treatment and wealthy enough to afford a surgeon. But here's the thing that keeps you awake at night, staring at the ceiling of your chamber. You still have the cold. The cough persists. Your fever continues its nightly routine. All the bloodletting, the skull drilling, the fumigation, the toxic potions, and now the facial burning have accomplished exactly nothing against the rhinovirus that started this entire nightmare. You're not recovering from illness, you're accumulating trauma, while your body tries desperately to fight off a common cold despite medieval medicine's best efforts to kill you. The barber surgeon applies a poultice of egg white and flour to the burn, covering it with linen. He promises the scar will fade in time. He's wrong, but you're too exhausted to care. You drift into feverish sleep, dreaming of glowing irons and bird-beaked doctors. Tomorrow they'll probably try something new. On day 10, a new symptom emerges that sends everyone into a panic. Small red spots appear on your chest and arms. In the modern world, this might be identified as a viral heat rash from the constant sweating under heavy blankets, or even a reaction to one of the many toxic substances you've been forced to ingest. But in 1347, red spots mean only one thing: syphilis might be involved. Or worse, you're developing the skin manifestations of advanced humoral corruption. The physician takes one look and prescribes mercury treatment, and you're about to discover that the cure for skin problems can literally drive you insane. Mercury quicksilver, as it's called in medieval times, is considered a miraculous substance. It's liquid metal, cold to the touch, flowing like water but heavy as stone. It seems to exist between states of matter, which makes it perfect for medieval medicine's obsession with balance and transformation. Mercury is prescribed for skin diseases, syphilis, leprosy, and various other conditions where the skin is affected. The theory is that mercury's transformative properties will penetrate deep into the body, binding with corrupt humours and drawing them out through the skin. The treatment comes in several forms, all of them terrible. The physician prescribes mercury ointment, a grey paste made by mixing mercury with lard, sulphur, and various herbs. This is to be rubbed vigorously into your skin twice daily, particularly over the rash areas. The servant assigned to apply it wears gloves, which should tell you something. The ointment is cold and slippery, and as it's massaged into your skin, you can feel the tiny mercury droplets moving beneath your fingers, sliding around like living things. Within days of starting mercury treatment, you begin experiencing side effects that medieval doctors consider proof the medicine is working. Your gums become swollen and painful. Your teeth feel loose in their sockets. You're salivating, constantly producing enormous amounts of thick metallic tasting spit that you have to constantly spit into a basin. This excessive salivation is called patiolism, and medieval physicians see it as the body purging corrupt humours through the mouth. Modern toxicology recognizes it as mercury poisoning. Your salivary glands are being damaged by heavy metal accumulation. But the treatment continues because you're responding well. The physician increases the frequency of applications. You're now being rubbed with mercury ointment 3 times daily, and you're beginning to develop tremors in your hands. Your fingers shake when you try to hold a cup. Your handwriting, if you attempted it, would be illegible. This tremor, known as hatter's shakes in later centuries when hat makers developed the same symptoms from mercury used in felt production, is your nervous system being systematically poisoned. Your breath takes on a strange metallic odor. Your sense of taste distorts. Everything tastes like copper and rot. You're experiencing mood swings alternating between anxiety and deep melancholy. Sometimes you feel paranoid, convinced the servants are plotting against you. Other times you weep for no reason. These psychological symptoms are mercury's effects on your brain tissue, but the medieval physician interprets them as the medicine stirring up trapped melancholic humours, bringing them to the surface where they can be addressed. The truly horrifying part: this treatment can continue for weeks or months. Syphilis patients in later centuries would undergo mercury treatment for years, slowly accumulating nerve damage, brain damage, kidney failure, and tooth loss. The phrase "a night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury" referred to contracting syphilis and enduring endless mercury therapy. Historians still argue about whether mercury treatment ever cured anyone of anything, or whether the few patients who recovered did so despite the treatment, not because of it. Your skin rash, which was probably just a stress response or reaction to all the other treatments, is starting to fade, but that's because 2 weeks have passed, and viral rashes naturally resolve. The physician credits the mercury. You now have loose teeth, trembling hands, Constant salivation, mood disturbances, and probably early-stage kidney damage, but the red spots are gone. By medieval medical standards, this is a successful outcome. But wait, there's more. Because mercury ointment is just one delivery method. Some physicians advocate for mercury fumigation, making you inhale mercury vapor. This involves heating mercury in a closed room until it vaporizes, then having you breathe the fumes. The vapor penetrates even deeper than the ointment, the theory goes, reaching internal organs and purifying them from within. The reality is that inhaling mercury vapor causes even faster neurological damage than skin application. You're spared the fumigation, but only because the physician is concerned that combined with the hole in your skull, the vapors might penetrate too deeply and damage your brain. He's worried about the wrong thing. Your brain is already being damaged by the mercury you're absorbing through your skin, but his caution accidentally saves you from an even worse fate. There's also mercury mixed into food and drink, mercury sublimate dissolved in wine, mercury pills to be swallowed. Some desperate patients with advanced syphilis would take mercury internally for years, their teeth falling out, their jaws rotting away, their minds deteriorating into confusion and hallucination. The symptoms of late-stage mercury poisoning tremors, personality changes, memory loss, sensory disturbances look remarkably similar to late-stage syphilis, which created confusion about whether patients were dying from disease or treatment. By day 15 of your illness, you're sitting in bed with a hole in your skull, a burn scar on your temple, trembling hands, swollen, bleeding gums, and saliva constantly dripping into a basin beside you. Your original cold is long gone. Your immune system defeated it around day 7, as immune systems do. But you're now suffering from iatrogenic illness disease caused by medical treatment. Every intervention designed to help you has instead created new problems, and each new problem has triggered additional treatments, spiraling into a cascade of medical trauma. The mercury treatment finally ends when the rash disappears completely. The physician pronounces you cured, though he warns that you'll need to be vigilant for the rash's return. Your trembling hands, he assures you, will settle down once the mercury finishes its work of rebalancing your humours. He's wrong, the tremors will persist for months, possibly years, possibly forever. But he seems so confident and you're too exhausted to question him. Tonight you lie in the darkness, hands shaking, mouth full of metallic saliva, and wonder if maybe the illness wasn't so bad after all. By week 3, the physician decides you need additional humoral drainage, but this time through a method that seems almost gentle after everything else you've endured, leeches. The medieval leech is a medical professional in its own right, carefully bred and maintained specifically for therapeutic bloodletting. Thousands of them are harvested from ponds and marshes kept in special jars by apothecaries and physicians, fed on animal blood to keep them healthy, and applied to patients with the same clinical precision as any other medical instrument. You're about to become intimately acquainted with Hirudo medicinalis, the medicinal leech, and discover that having creatures drink your blood is somehow both less and more disturbing than you imagined. The physician arrives with a glass jar containing perhaps 24 leeches swimming in murky water. They're dark, slug-like creatures, each about 2 inches long, with segmented bodies that contract and expand as they move. At one end is a sucker for attachment, at the other, a mouth containing 3 sets of tiny teeth arranged in a triangle pattern. When a leech bites, it makes a Y-shaped incision in your skin, then secretes an anticoagulant called hiruidin that prevents your blood from clotting while it feeds. Medieval physicians know none of these biological details, they just know that leeches drain blood efficiently and somehow keep it flowing freely. The physician explains that leeches are superior to fleams and lancets for certain types of bloodletting because they're self-regulating. A leech will feed until it's had its fill, then detach naturally, having consumed exactly the amount of blood it needs. This supposedly creates a more balanced humoral drainage than manual bleeding, where the surgeon must guess at the proper quantity. It's a lovely theory that ignores the fact that blood loss is blood loss, regardless of whether it's drained by metal or mouth. He selects the application sites carefully. For your persistent headache, which is actually caused by the hole they drilled in your skull becoming chronically inflamed leeches, will be placed on your temples and behind your ears. For your general weakness caused by weeks of bloodletting and mercury poisoning, leeches will go on your abdomen to drain the liver's supposed excess. For the trembling in your hands, mercury toxicity, leeches on your wrists to remove corrupt humours from the extremities. In total, 20 leeches will be applied to various points on your body. The physician removes a leech from the jar with wooden tongs and places it on your temple. The sensation is immediate and deeply unsettling. The leech's sucker attaches to your skin with a gentle pressure, then you feel the bite, not painful exactly. More like a sharp pinch followed by a strange pulling sensation. The leech's body begins to swell almost immediately as it draws blood. You can see it expanding, darkening, becoming engorged. The psychological revulsion is intense. There's a living creature attached to your face, drinking your blood, and you're supposed to lie still and let it happen. More leeches are applied. One behind each ear where the skin is thin and blood vessels are close to the surface. 3 on your abdomen, arranged in a triangle around your navel. 2 on each wrist. Several on your upper arms. Within minutes, your body is decorated with feeding leeches, each one swelling grotesquely as it consumes your blood. The strange pulling sensation multiplies across your body. You can feel your blood being drawn out, feel the leeches' bodies pulsing as they swallow. The process takes time. A hungry leech can feed for 20 to 40 minutes before becoming satiated. You lie there trying not to think about the creatures attached to you, trying not to look at them. The physician sits nearby reading from a medical text, occasionally glancing up to check the leech's progress. The room is silent except for your breathing and the occasional wet sucking sound when a leech adjusts its grip. This is medicine. This is healing. This is what caring for the sick looks like in 1347. Gradually the leeches begin to detach. A satiated leech can consume 5 to 10 times its body weight in blood, meaning each one takes roughly a teaspoon of your blood. With 20 leeches, that's nearly a cup of blood removed. The first leech drops off your temple, landing on the pillow beside your head, now fat and sluggish. The physician collects it in the jar to be disposed of later. Used leeches are never reapplied to other patients, as even medieval medicine recognizes the risk of transmitting disease through shared bloodsuckers. But here's where leech therapy gets especially messy. The anticoagulant they injected keeps your blood flowing even after they detach. Each bite site continues to bleed freely for several hours. Small rivulets of blood run down your temple, behind your ears, across your abdomen. The physician expected this. It's part of the therapeutic effect. The continued bleeding ensures maximum humoral drainage. He applies light cloth bandages to each site, but they quickly soak through, and you're left lying in bed surrounded by blood-stained linen, feeling dizzy and nauseous from yet another round of blood loss. Historians still argue about whether leech therapy provided any genuine medical benefit. Interestingly, modern medicine has rediscovered medical leeches for very specific applications. They're FDA approved for use after certain surgeries to reduce venous congestion and promote blood flow to reattach body parts. The hirudin they secrete is genuinely useful in preventing clots, but medieval mass application of leeches for humoral balancing, that was just another way to weaken already sick patients. Some patients developed infections from leech bites. The creatures' mouths aren't sterile, and their anticoagulant creates open wounds perfect for bacterial colonization. Others became severely anemic from repeated leech treatments. There are documented cases of patients having hundreds of leeches applied over the course of an illness, losing dangerous amounts of blood while their underlying conditions went untreated. The leeches themselves sometimes caused problems by accidentally being swallowed, or by attaching to internal tissues during treatments involving body cavities. By evening, the bleeding from your leech bites has finally slowed. You're covered in small Y-shaped wounds that will take days to heal and leave permanent tiny scars. You've lost another cup of blood to add to the several pints removed over the previous weeks. You're so anemic now that standing makes you dizzy, your heart races with minimal exertion, and your skin has taken on a pale greyish cast. But the physician is pleased. Your pulses are weaker, he observes, which means the excess blood has been successfully drained. You're making excellent progress toward humoral balance. You've survived 3 weeks of medieval medical treatment. Barely. By week 4, your body has been through everything medieval medicine can throw at it. But there's one more intervention that's considered both therapeutic and routine purgatives and enemas. Medieval medical theory holds that corrupt humours accumulate not just in the blood but throughout the digestive tract, and they must be forcefully expelled from both ends. You're about to experience medieval gastroenterology, and it will make everything that's come before seem almost dignified by comparison. The goal is simple: make you vomit violently and produce explosive diarrhea, preferably simultaneously, until your body is cleansed of all foul matter. The apothecary arrives with a collection of potions and implements that look more suited to torture than healing. There's a cup containing a thick, dark liquid that smells of bitter herbs and something rotten. This is an emetic, a substance specifically designed to induce vomiting. The recipe varies by practitioner, but common ingredients include mustard seeds, radish juice, hellebore root, and various other plants containing compounds that irritate the stomach lining so severely that your body's only response is to evacuate everything immediately. You're instructed to drink it quickly before you can taste it too thoroughly. The liquid is oily and bitter, coating your tongue with an acrid film that makes you gag even before it reaches your stomach. Within minutes, you feel the effects. Your stomach begins to cramp and churn. Saliva floods your mouth, your body's preparation for vomiting. The nausea builds in waves, each one stronger than the last, until finally you're retching violently into a basin held by a servant. The vomiting is spectacular and relentless. Your stomach empties itself, then continues contracting, bringing up bile and just dry heaving that racks your entire body. Your abdominal muscles cramp from the exertion, tears stream from your eyes. Your throat burns from the stomach acid, and the physician watches approvingly, examining the contents of the basin like a fortune teller reading entrails. The yellow bile visible in your vomit proves his diagnosis: correct excess choler that needed to be expelled. The fact that you're now weakened and dehydrated from violent vomiting doesn't concern him. The treatment is working exactly as intended. But the purging isn't finished. While your stomach is still churning, the apothecary produces an enema syringe, a large brass or wooden device with a nozzle at one end, and a plunger mechanism at the other, like an oversized version of a modern turkey baster. It's filled with a liquid concoction meant to be introduced into your rectum to induce powerful bowel evacuation. The formula might include water wine bile from various animals, soap honey herbs like senna or aloe, and sometimes harsher substances like vinegar or salt solutions. The procedure itself is humiliating and uncomfortable. You're positioned on your side while the apothecary inserts the nozzle and forces the liquid into your bowels. The cramping begins almost immediately, sharp, intense spasms as your intestines react violently to the irritating solution. You're given a chamber pot and left to experience what medieval medicine considers therapeutic purging. The diarrhea that follows is catastrophic, leaving you weak and trembling, your body evacuating not just fecal matter, but enormous amounts of fluid and electrolytes that you desperately need. Purgatives and enemas aren't just one-time treatments. Medieval medical theory often prescribes repeated purging daily, or even multiple times daily until the patient's stools run clear and bile-free. Some unfortunate patients underwent purging treatments for weeks, gradually dying from dehydration and electrolyte imbalances, while physicians praised the thorough humoral cleansing. Dysentery and cholera diseases that already cause severe diarrhea were sometimes treated with additional purgatives, accelerating death, while doctors remained confident in their therapeutic approach. The substances used in medieval purgatives range from merely unpleasant to genuinely toxic. Hellebore, a powerful purge, contains cardiac glycosides that can cause heart arrhythmias and death. Croton oil, another favourite, is so irritating that it causes severe intestinal inflammation and bleeding. Mercury compounds were sometimes included in purging preparations, adding heavy metal poisoning to gastrointestinal trauma. Antimony, a metalloid element, was particularly popular. Patients would swallow antimony pills that would irritate the gut enough to cause vomiting and diarrhea, then retrieve the pills from their stool or vomit to use again, earning them the nickname perpetual pills. Historians still argue about how many people were killed by overzealous purging treatments. The practice was so common and so embedded in medical theory that it persisted well into the 18th and 19th centuries. George Washington, the first US president, likely died in 1799, not from his throat infection, but from aggressive bloodletting and purging prescribed by his physicians. He lost approximately half his blood volume and endured repeated enemas and emetics in his final days, dying from hypovolemic shock and dehydration, while doctors congratulated themselves on their vigorous treatment. By the end of your purging session, you're utterly depleted. You've vomited until your throat is raw and your stomach muscles ache. You've experienced diarrhea so severe that you're too weak to stand. You're dehydrated with dry lips and sunken eyes. Your electrolyte balance is dangerously disrupted. Though medieval medicine doesn't understand electrolytes, they would notice your confusion muscle, weakness, and irregular heartbeat. But these symptoms are interpreted as the final stages of humoral corruption being expelled, not as evidence that the treatment is killing you. The physician examines the results of your purging with satisfaction. Your vomit showed clear evidence of yellow bile. Your stool contained dark matter that he interprets as black bile. The treatment has successfully drained excess humours from your digestive tract. He prescribes a light diet to rebuild your strength, clear broths, white bread, perhaps some boiled fish. You're to rest and avoid excitement while your body recovers from the therapeutic purging. What he doesn't acknowledge is that your body is recovering from the treatment itself, not from any underlying illness. The cold you had a month ago is long gone. Everything you're suffering from now, anemia from bloodletting, mercury poisoning infection around your skull hole, burns from cauterization, and now severe dehydration from purging, is iatrogenic, caused entirely by medical intervention. You would have been healthier if you'd never called for a physician in the first place. But you can't say that. Medieval medical authority is backed by university training, ancient texts, and religious sanction. Questioning it is tantamount to questioning God's order. So you lie in your fouled bed, too weak to protest, and wonder how anyone survives being sick in this world. After a month of medical intervention that would make a modern emergency room physician weep with horror, you develop a new complication, severe tooth pain. One of your molars has become infected, whether from general poor health, mercury damage to your gums, or just bad luck in an era before dental hygiene is irrelevant. What matters is that you now have a toothache, and in medieval medicine that means you're about to experience dentistry without anesthesia, performed by someone whose primary qualifications are owning a pair of pliers and having strong hands. The barber surgeon returns because in medieval society dental care falls under the same professional umbrella as haircuts, bloodletting and minor surgery. There are no specialized dentists, no endodontists, no orthodontists, no gentle hygienists. There's just a man with tools who's extracted hundreds of teeth from screaming patients and considers himself quite skilled at the work. He examines your mouth, pressing on the swollen gum around the infected tooth, and makes his diagnosis immediately. The tooth is corrupted by foul humours and must be removed. There's no discussion of cleaning the infection, no antibiotics, no root canal. Medieval dentistry has one solution to tooth problems: extraction. He shows you his instruments with the casual pride of a craftsman displaying his tools. There's the dental pelican, a terrifying device named for its resemblance to a pelican's beak, with a claw that hooks around the tooth and a handle for leverage. There's the tooth key, essentially a large key-shaped instrument that grips the tooth and twists it free. There are various forceps in different sizes for different teeth. All of them are made of iron or steel. None are sterilized beyond perhaps a quick wipe on the surgeon's apron, and all of them are designed to apply tremendous force to your jaw. You're given strong wine again, several cups drunk quickly on an empty stomach, and a leather strap to bite down on. Wait, you think through the alcohol haze wouldn't biting down interfere with the tooth extraction? You're right to be confused. You hold the strap instead, gripping it so hard your knuckles turn white. Someone holds your head firmly against the back of the chair. The barber surgeon positions himself, selects his dental key and approaches your open mouth. The key's claw slips around your infected molar. You feel the metal scraping against your tooth, against your gum, the pressure building as he works it into position. Then he begins to turn. The sensation is indescribable. Not just pain, though there's plenty of that, but a deep nauseating pressure as your tooth is twisted against the bone of your jaw. You can hear grinding, feel something beginning to give way. The barber surgeon grunts with effort, applying more torque to the key. Your hands grip the chair arm so hard you think your fingers might break. Something snaps, not cleanly, not all at once, but in a series of small fractures as the tooth's roots tear free from your jawbone. The pain explodes through your face, radiating up into your eye socket, down into your neck. Blood floods your mouth, immediately warm, metallic, choking. The barber surgeon works the tooth back and forth, now loosening it further, and with a final wrench it comes free. He holds it up triumphantly, root, and all blooded and still attached to small fragments of bone. But there's a problem. The tooth has broken, only part of it came out. A root fragment remains embedded in your jaw, and the barber surgeon must dig it out with a smaller instrument, something that looks like a curved pick. He probes into the bleeding socket, feeling for the fragment, causing fresh waves of agony as he scrapes against exposed bone and nerve endings. Finally, he hooks the fragment and pulls it free, tossing it aside with the main tooth. Blood pours from the wound. You're spitting blood into a basin, but it keeps coming, filling your mouth faster than you can expel it. The barber surgeon packs the socket with cloth soaked in wine and vinegar, pressing firmly to encourage clotting. The cloth tastes awful, sour wine mixed with your blood, the fibres catching on your tongue. You're instructed to bite down on the packing, using pressure to control the bleeding. Your jaw throbs with every heartbeat. The wound where your tooth used to be feels enormous, a gaping crater in your gum. You can probe it with your tongue, feeling the rough edges of the socket, the taste of blood and wine making you nauseous. Tooth extraction is one of the most common medical procedures in medieval Europe, and it's performed thousands of times daily across the continent. Tooth decay is rampant due to diets high in grain and honey with no fluoride or proper brushing. Infections are common, and the only solution is extraction. Wealthy people might have multiple teeth pulled over their lifetimes, gradually losing the ability to chew solid food. Poor people often end up toothless by middle age. The social expectation is that dental pain is simply part of life, and having teeth yanked out by a barber surgeon is just one more thing you have to endure. But here's where medieval dentistry reveals a fascinating piece of medical folklore, the toothworm theory. Many people believe that dental pain is caused by tiny worms burrowing into teeth and eating them from inside. Various treatments exist for killing these imaginary worms holding smoke in your mouth, applying hot needles to cavities, placing seeds or herbs against the tooth to attract the worms out. Some practitioners claim to extract toothworms, actually just showing patients tooth pulp or food debris and claiming it's the creature that was causing pain. Historians still argue about whether anyone actually believed in toothworms, or whether it was convenient fiction to explain dental pain before bacterial infection was understood. Your extraction wound bleeds for hours, soaking through multiple cloth packings. Eventually, the bleeding slows to an ooze, and you're left with a painful empty socket that will take weeks to heal. You can't chew on that side. Eating becomes a challenge. Everything must be soft room temperature, carefully positioned to avoid the wound. The socket will eventually fill in with scar tissue and bone, leaving a depression in your gum, but you'll never have that tooth again. And with your mercury-damaged gums and poor overall health, it probably won't be the last tooth you lose. The barber surgeon collects his fee and departs, leaving you with a mouthful of blood and another traumatic medical memory. You've now experienced nearly everything medieval medicine has to offer: bloodletting, trepanation, cauterization, mercury poisoning, leech therapy, purging, and dental extraction. If you survive all this, you'll have proven that the human body is remarkably resilient, not because of medieval medicine, but in spite of it. By week 5, you've developed what people in your household are calling the flux, severe persistent diarrhea that won't stop no matter what you do. In the modern world, this might be diagnosed as gastroenteritis, irritable bowel syndrome, triggered by stress and poor nutrition, or simply the aftermath of all the purging treatments you've endured. Your intestines are damaged, your gut flora is destroyed, and your body is desperately trying to recover from weeks of medical assault. But in medieval medicine, the flux is a condition unto itself, a dangerous humoral imbalance that requires immediate and aggressive treatment, which means paradoxically that your diarrhea will be treated with more substances that cause diarrhea, because medieval logic sometimes works in mysterious ways. The flux is genuinely feared in medieval society, and for good reason. Severe diarrhea can kill within days through dehydration and electrolyte loss, especially when combined with the malnutrition and weakness you're already experiencing. Dysentery bloody flux sweeps through medieval towns and armies, killing thousands. Even simple watery diarrhea can prove fatal when there's no understanding of fluid replacement or electrolyte balance. Your household is right to be concerned. They're just completely wrong about how to fix it. The physician arrives and conducts his examination, which involves inspecting your stool with the same careful attention he gave your urine. Medieval medical texts contain elaborate classifications of diarrhea based on colour consistency, smell, and frequency. Watery and pale suggest cold, wet humours, excess phlegm flooding the intestines. Dark and bloody indicates hot, bilious humours, yellow bile corrupting the bowels. Green stool means the liver is releasing raw bile. Black stools suggest black bile or internal bleeding. Your flux is producing watery yellowish discharge which the physician diagnoses as a combination of excess phlegm and bile that needs to be dried out and rebalanced. His first prescription seems sensible astringent foods that will bind your bowels. You're given boiled quinces, dried pomegranate, toasted breadcrumbs, and chalk mixed into wine. These foods are genuinely astringent. They contain tannins and other compounds that reduce intestinal motility. You might actually benefit from them. But then the physician adds the medieval twist: you also need to take a mixture containing opium, which will slow your intestines combined with herbs that dry out the wet humours. This opium preparation does help with the diarrhea, but at the cost of making you constipated, drowsy, and potentially addicted if treatment continues too long. But here's where the treatment becomes paradoxical and dangerous. The physician also believes that the corrupted humours causing your flux need to be expelled, not just stopped. So while giving you astringents to bind your bowels, he is also prescribing additional purging to clean out the source of the problem. It's like trying to put out a fire by adding controlled amounts of gasoline. You're given purgative herbs, just milder ones than before, supposedly to encourage the expulsion of bile, while the astringents prevent excessive fluid loss. The result is that your intestines are receiving completely contradictory signals, and your flux continues unabated. Meanwhile, you're becoming dangerously dehydrated. Medieval medicine understands that flux causes weakness and wasting, but it doesn't understand the mechanism. They observe that flux patients become thin-weak and confused with sunken eyes and dry skin. They prescribe nourishing broths and wine to rebuild strength, which does help somewhat, but they don't understand that your body is literally losing water and salts faster than you can replace them, that your blood volume is dropping, that your organs are struggling to function with inadequate fluid. The household wise woman has her own treatment for flux, wearing a belt made of weasel skin around your abdomen. The weasel, being a dry hot animal by medieval elemental classification, will supposedly draw out the cold wet humours causing your diarrhea. You humour her and wear the belt, which accomplishes exactly nothing except making you smell vaguely of dead weasel. Similar folk remedies include carrying a hare's foot drinking water in which hot iron has been quenched, or wearing red flannel underwear. None of these work, but they provide psychological comfort and the feeling that something is being done. Another common flux treatment involves dietary restrictions so severe it borders on starvation. The theory holds that food generates humours, so eating less means producing fewer corrupt humours that could feed the flux. You're placed on a diet of just boiled barley water and dry toast for several days. This worsens your malnutrition and weakness, while doing nothing to address the underlying intestinal damage. Your body needs nutrients to heal, but medieval theory says you need humoral deprivation to recover. Historians still argue about what caused most cases of medieval flux. Waterborne diseases like cholera and dysentery certainly played a role. Contaminated wells raw sewage in streets, no understanding of sanitation. Food poisoning from spoiled meat or mouldy grain. Parasitic infections from unwashed vegetables. And in your case, iatrogenic causes damage from previous treatments, creating chronic intestinal problems. Whatever the original cause, medieval treatment usually made things worse rather than better. There's also the psychological toll. You've now been sick for 5 weeks, during which you've been bled repeatedly, had your skull drilled, been poisoned with mercury, had teeth extracted and purged until you thought you might die. Now you can't control your bowels, spending hours each day on a chamber pot, weak and humiliated. Your household is maintaining polite distance, partly from fear of contagion, partly from the smell and unpleasantness of caring for someone with severe diarrhea. You feel profoundly alone, trapped in a failing body, subjected to treatments that seem designed to torture rather than heal. The flux finally begins to improve after about 10 days, not because of the treatments, but because your body's natural healing processes gradually repair your damaged intestines. The physician credits his astringent therapy and carefully balanced purging. The wise woman credits the weasel belt. The chaplain credits your prayers. None of them acknowledge that simply providing clean water, basic nutrition and rest, while doing absolutely nothing else, would have resolved the problem faster and with far less suffering. By the time the flux subsides, you've lost significant weight. Your clothes hang loosely on your frame. Your face's gaunt eyes sunken in dark circles. You look like someone who's been seriously ill for over a month, because you have been not from a simple cold, but from the relentless assault of medieval medicine on your body. You've survived, but just barely, and you're beginning to realize that the greatest threat to your health wasn't the original illness, but the cure. By week 6, the physician decides you need surgery for what he diagnoses as a humeral abscess, a swollen, painful lump that's developed on your leg. In reality, this is probably a hematoma or infection from one of the many wounds you've accumulated, but medieval medicine sees it as a pocket of corrupt yellow bile that must be lanced and drained. You're about to experience medieval surgery in its full glory, no anesthesia, no antiseptic technique, no understanding of infection, just sharp blades and absolute confidence. The barber surgeon returns with his leather roll of instruments, and you know from experience that nothing good comes from that bag. The procedure will take place in your chamber rather than any surgical theatre. There are no surgical theatres in 1347. Operations happen wherever the patient is, often in dim lighting with curious household members watching. The barber surgeon spreads his instruments on a cloth beside your bed. Scalpels of various sizes, probes, hooks for retracting tissue, forceps needles, and thread for stitching. Everything is made of iron or steel stained with old blood from previous procedures. The concept of sterilization won't exist for another 500 years. These instruments have been inside dozens of other patients and will be inside dozens more, carrying bacteria from body to body. You're positioned on the bed with your leg extended and exposed. Someone brings additional candles for light. A servant stands ready with cloths to mop up blood. You're given wine again. Always wine, the medieval substitute for actual anesthesia, though by now you've learned it barely dulls the pain. You drink anyway because the psychological comfort of ritual is all you have. The barber surgeon examines the swollen area, pressing on it with his fingers, making you wince. He can feel fluid moving under the skin, proof, he says, that corrupt humours have accumulated and must be released. He selects a scalpel, tests its edge with his thumb, and without further ceremony cuts into your leg. The pain is immediate and shocking, a white-hot line drawn across your flesh. Blood wells up instantly, and the barber surgeon works quickly, cutting deeper, following the pocket of fluid. You're gritting your teeth, fingers digging into the bed, trying not to scream or thrash, because sudden movement could cause the blade to slip and cut something vital. The servant mops at the blood, but it keeps flowing, obscuring the surgical site. The barber surgeon uses his fingers to probe the wound, exploring by touch, feeling for the boundaries of the abscess. This is how medieval surgery works. There are no X-rays, no imaging, no way to see inside the body, except by cutting it open and investigating manually. He's navigating by experience and guesswork, hoping not to nick an artery or nerve. His fingers, which touched his previous patient and have been nowhere near soap or water, are now inside your body, introducing whatever bacteria he's carrying directly into your tissues. When he finds the fluid pocket, he enlarges the incision and begins to squeeze. Pus and blood pour out a mixture of infection, lymphatic fluid and cellular debris that's accumulated in the damaged tissue. The pressure relief actually does feel somewhat better, you have to admit. draining an abscess is one of the few medieval procedures that genuinely helps, though not for the reasons they think. They believe they're releasing corrupt yellow bile. Actually, they're removing infected material and reducing pressure. The outcome is the same even if the understanding is wrong. But the surgeon isn't satisfied with simple drainage. He believes some of the corrupt humours have solidified into matter that must be physically removed. He takes a sharp curette, a spoon-shaped scraping tool, and begins debriding the wound cavity, scraping away tissue that he deems diseased. Some of this might actually be necrotic tissue that needs removal, but he's also scraping away healthy tissue, creating raw surfaces that will take longer to heal and are vulnerable to infection. You're biting down on the leather strap now, making sounds that aren't quite screams but close. Once he's satisfied with the debridement, he irrigates the wound with wine. The alcohol does have some antiseptic effect, though it also burns like liquid fire in the open wound. Then comes the decision: leave it open to continue draining or stitch it closed. Medieval surgical texts debate this question extensively. Some advocate for leaving wounds open, because they believe healing requires the continued drainage of humours. Others prefer closure to protect against bad air entering the wound. Your surgeon chooses a middle path. He'll close part of the wound, but leave a small opening for drainage. The stitching is done with thread made from linen or animal gut, neither of which is sterile. The needle pierces your skin repeatedly in one side of the wound, out the other, pulling the edges together. Each stitch is a new point of pain in already traumatized flesh. The surgeon ties each stitch individually, creating a line of knots along your leg that looks like some medieval embroidery pattern. He leaves a small gap at one end of the wound, inserting a piece of linen thread through it, a drainage wick that will allow fluids to seep out while the rest of the wound heals. The final step is bandaging. The surgeon applies a poultice made from honey egg white and various herbs directly onto the wound, then wraps everything in linen strips. The honey actually has antimicrobial properties. Medieval medicine accidentally got this one partially right, but the other ingredients are useless or potentially harmful. The bandage is wrapped tight to prevent humours from leaking and to hold everything in place. You're instructed not to move your leg for several days to avoid disturbing the healing process. The drainage wick will need to be changed daily, requiring someone to unwrap the bandage, pull out the old thread, clean the wound, insert fresh thread and rebandage. Each dressing change is a new ordeal of pain and potential contamination. The wound might heal cleanly, or it might become infected despite the honey. Medieval surgery has maybe a 50-50 success rate, which seems miraculous given the conditions, but devastating if you're on the wrong side of those odds. Historians still argue about medieval surgical outcomes. Some patients clearly survived and healed. We have historical accounts of people living years after amputations, tumour removals, and other major surgeries. But many more died of infection, hemorrhage, or shock. The surgeon's skill varied wildly, from university-trained physicians who understood anatomy from dissections to barbers who learned by apprenticeship and trial and error. You got lucky your surgeon is experienced and his hands are relatively steady. But luck is a terrible basis for medical care. By evening, your surgically drained leg is throbbing in rhythm with your heartbeat. The bandage feels tight and hot. You're already wondering if the wound is becoming infected, or if this is just normal surgical pain. There's no way to know until tomorrow's dressing change, when they'll unwrap everything and assess how the wound looks. For now, you lie still, trying not to jostle your leg, adding surgical trauma to your month-long catalogue of medical suffering. By week 7, you've learned something that every medieval person knows instinctively: timing matters in medicine. The physician arrives not with instruments or potions, but with an astrological chart, a complex diagram showing the positions of planets the phases of the moon, and the 12 signs of the zodiac. Before he prescribes any new treatment, before the barber surgeon touches you again, they must consult the stars. Medieval medicine is inextricably bound to astrology, and the cosmos supposedly dictates when it's safe to bleed, purge, operate, or even take medication. You're about to discover that your treatment schedule is determined not by your symptoms, but by celestial mechanics that have absolutely nothing to do with your health. The physician spreads his chart on the table, pointing to various symbols and lines with a small wooden pointer. Each zodiac sign, he explains, governs a different part of the body. Aries rules the head and face. Taurus controls the neck and throat. Gemini corresponds to the shoulders and arms. The progression continues down the body. Cancer for the chest. Leo for the heart. Virgo for the digestive organs, until Pisces governs the feet. When the moon passes through a particular zodiac sign, that body part is considered especially vulnerable, and medical procedures on that area must be avoided. Today the moon is in Aries. This means your head is under lunar influence, making it a terrible time for any treatment involving your skull. Remember that hole they drilled weeks ago. If it needs any attention, cleaning, examination, adjustment of dressings that work, must wait until the moon moves into a different sign. Attempting head treatments while the moon is in Aries could cause excessive bleeding, introduce corrupt humours, or simply fail to work because the cosmic conditions aren't favourable. This isn't superstition in the medieval mind, this is medical science based on ancient astronomical observations and the fundamental belief that celestial bodies influence earthly matter. But zodiac signs are just the beginning. The planets also exert influence. Saturn, cold and dry, governs melancholy and black bile. Jupiter, warm and moist, rules blood. Mars, hot and dry, controls yellow bile and anger. Venus governs pleasure and phlegm. The moon affects all bodily fluids and is particularly important for women's health. The sun represents vital heat and overall vitality. When planets are in favourable alignment, treatments work better. When planets oppose each other or form difficult angles, medical interventions become risky or ineffective. The physician consults an ephemeris, a book listing planetary positions for every day of the year. He traces calculations with his finger, muttering Latin phrases. Mars is currently in opposition to Saturn, he announces, which means any treatment involving heat and blood like cauterization or bloodletting should be postponed. The cosmic forces are working against each other, and attempting such procedures now would be fighting the universe itself. You feel relieved no more burning or bleeding today, but also trapped by this celestial prison, your body hostage to planetary movements you can't see or control. There are also Egyptian days, or unlucky days scattered throughout the year, dates when the stars align so unfavourably that no medical treatment should be attempted at all. Perform surgery on an Egyptian day, and the patient will almost certainly die, or so medical texts warn. These days are carefully recorded in medical calendars, and conscientious physicians refuse to work on them. Some Egyptian days are calculated from fixed calendar dates, others from lunar cycles, creating a complex schedule of medically dangerous times that has nothing to do with actual disease patterns. Even bloodletting, the most common medical procedure, follows elaborate astrological rules. Each vein in the body corresponds to a zodiac sign and planet. The cephalic vein in the arm is governed by Aries. The basilic vein is ruled by Virgo. The saphenous vein in the leg corresponds to Pisces. The physician must choose not only where to bleed you, but when ensuring that the relevant zodiac sign is favourable and the moon isn't interfering. A complex table of calculations determines optimal bleeding days, with some dates marked in red as extremely favourable and others crossed out as dangerous. Historians still argue about whether astrological medicine ever provided any real benefit. Some suggest that by forcing physicians to pause and consider timing, astrology prevented hasty interventions and gave patients time to recover naturally. Others point out that delaying necessary treatment while waiting for favourable star alignments probably killed patients who needed immediate care. The truth likely varies by case. Sometimes the delay helped, sometimes it hurt, but the cosmic rationale was always wrong. The fascinating part is that this isn't fringe medicine. Universities teach medical astrology as core curriculum. Physicians who don't consult astrological charts are considered incompetent or reckless. The most prestigious medical schools in Europe, Bologna, Montpellier, Paris, all require students to master astronomical calculations alongside anatomy and pharmacology. A physician's toolkit includes not just scalpels and leeches, but also an astrolabe for calculating planetary positions and charts, showing zodiac body correspondences. The physician finishes his calculations and delivers his verdict, no major interventions for the next 3 days, while Mars and Saturn are in opposition. After that, when the moon moves into Libra, a balanced moderate sign, you can undergo gentle treatments like herbal baths and mild dietary adjustments. In another week, when Jupiter moves into a favourable aspect, more aggressive therapies can resume. You're given a schedule that reads like a horoscope. Tuesday moon in Cancer, drainage of leg wound favourable. Friday Sun enters Leo, bloodletting contraindicated. Next month Mercury retrograde, all treatments postponed. You lie in bed staring at the astrological chart, trying to understand how your recovery is supposedly linked to planets millions of miles away. Your rational mind, the part that's been battered but not destroyed by weeks of medieval medicine, recognizes this as nonsense. But everyone around you, from the university-educated physician to the household servants, accepts it completely. The cosmos governs everything, including your body. You're not just sick, you're astronomically misaligned. The strange thing is, the enforced waiting might actually help. For the next 3 days, nobody will touch you. No bleeding, no purging, no burning, no drilling. Just rest, basic food, and the passage of time. Your body, given this accidental respite, begins the process of genuine healing. By the time the stars realign and treatments can resume, you might actually feel slightly better, and everyone will credit the wisdom of consulting the heavens rather than the simple benefit of being left alone. By week 8, the physician decides your humoral imbalances require a treatment that sounds almost reasonable, until you learn what it actually involves: therapeutic medicine derived from animal dung. Yes, dung. Feces. Excrement from various creatures carefully selected based on astrological and elemental properties, prepared into poultices, potions and pills that you'll be expected to apply to your skin or swallow. Medieval pharmacology has an extensive repertoire of dung-based remedies, and you're about to become intimately familiar with several of them. Welcome to the most disgusting chapter of your medical nightmare. The apothecary arrives with small clay pots sealed with wax, each labelled with names that initially mean nothing to you. Then he begins explaining, and you realise with mounting horror what these containers hold. There's crocodile dung imported at great expense from Egypt, considered especially powerful for skin conditions and fever. There's pigeon droppings collected fresh from dovecotes used for eye problems and baldness. Mouse feces carefully gathered and dried, prescribed for children's ailments and stomach troubles. Dog excrement aged until white and powdery, recommended for throat infections. And the prize specimen, human dung, preferably from a healthy young person, used in cases of severe poisoning or humoral corruption. The medical theory behind dung therapy is actually internally consistent within the humoral framework. Animals consume plants and transform them through digestion, creating substances that contain concentrated elemental properties. The dung retains these properties in an altered, supposedly more potent form. A crocodile, being a cold, wet creature associated with water and ancient wisdom, produces excrement that can cool excessive heat and balance corrupted humours. Mice, being hot and dry, generate droppings that counter cold, wet conditions. The logic is perfect and perfectly wrong. The apothecary begins preparing your treatments. For the inflamed wound on your leg, he makes a poultice from dog dung mixed with honey and crushed herbs. The aged whitened dog feces are supposedly milder and less likely to cause irritation. He grinds the dried excrement into powder, mixes it with honey into a paste, and spreads this mixture onto a cloth that will be bound directly against your surgical wound. You watch in disbelief as he approaches with what is literally a shit and honey bandage meant to promote healing. The smell alone makes you gag. For your persistent digestive problems caused by months of purging and toxic treatments, you're prescribed a potion containing mouse droppings boiled in wine. The tiny pellets are strained out after steeping, but their essence remains in the liquid. This wine, you're told, will restore balance to your intestinal humours and stop the cramping and irregularity you've experienced. You're expected to drink it. The apothecary watches expectantly as you raise the cup to your lips, the liquid smelling like sour wine with an undertone of something musty and foul. You drink. It tastes exactly as terrible as you imagined bitter wine with a dusty animal flavour that coats your tongue and makes your stomach revolt. You force it down while the apothecary nods approvingly. This treatment will continue daily for a week. Each morning you'll drink mouse-dropping wine and pretend it's helping. The placebo effect might actually provide some psychological comfort, but the actual pharmacological value is 0 or worse negative considering the potential for bacterial contamination from fecal matter. But wait, there's more. For your vision problems caused by malnutrition, anemia, and general poor health, the apothecary prescribes eye drops made from pigeon dung dissolved in water. This is genuinely one of the most popular eye treatments in medieval medicine, used across Europe and the Middle East. The theory holds that pigeons' keen eyesight is somehow transferred through their excrement to human eyes. The reality is that you're about to put bacteria-laden liquid directly into your eyes, risking infection in some of the most delicate tissues of your body. The eye drops burn immediately upon application. Your eyes water and turn red. The apothecary assures you this is the medicine working the pigeon essence cleansing your visual humours. Actually, your eyes are responding to foreign matter and potential pathogens being introduced to the conjunctiva. Over the next few days, if you're unlucky, you could develop conjunctivitis or worse. But everyone believes pigeon dung eye drops are effective, so they remain a standard treatment for centuries. Historians still argue about whether animal dung medicines ever provided genuine benefit. Some point out that certain animal feces might contain undigested plant compounds or gut bacteria that could theoretically have effects. Others note that any apparent benefits were likely coincidental, or due to the honey and herbs mixed with the dung rather than the excrement itself. The risk of bacterial infection, tetanus, E. coli, various parasites almost certainly outweighed any potential advantages. The most disturbing dung therapy reserved for desperate cases involves human feces. Medical texts describe collecting excrement from healthy young people, drying it, powdering it, and administering it to patients suffering from severe poisoning or unbalanced humours. The logic is that a healthy person's dung contains the essence of perfect humoral balance which can be transferred to the sick. This is fecal transplant therapy 500 years before anyone understands gut microbiomes done for completely wrong reasons but accidentally stumbling toward a therapy that modern medicine has recently rediscovered as legitimate treatment for certain conditions. You're spared the human feces pills, but only because your condition isn't deemed severe enough. Instead, you're treated to the full range of animal excrement preparations. The dog dung poultice on your leg wound the mouse-dropping wine for digestion, the pigeon dung eye drops for vision, and a paste made from goose droppings applied to your remaining areas of inflamed skin. You are literally covered in various types of shit, all applied with medical authority and genuine belief that this will help you heal. The psychological impact of dung therapy is difficult to overstate. You're already weakened, traumatized, and humiliated by 2 months of medical treatment. Now you're lying in bed, covered in animal feces, drinking excrement-infused wine, with burning eyes from pigeon dropping eye drops. Every instinct tells you this is wrong, that putting shit on and in your body cannot possibly be therapeutic. But everyone around you, the physician, the apothecary, the household servants, treats this as normal, effective medicine. You begin to doubt your own judgment. Maybe you're the one who's wrong. Maybe medieval medicine understands something you don't. You're not wrong. This is exactly as bad as it seems. But there's no way to opt out, no alternative medicine, to choose no escape from the medical paradigm of 1347. So you lie there covered in dung poultices and wait for the week to end. By week 9, a new illness sweeps through your town, something that strikes suddenly, causing high fever, severe sweating and death within 24 hours. It's called the sweating sickness, though this particular outbreak is likely influenza or some other acute viral infection. Whatever it is, it's killing people fast, and medieval medicine has no idea how to stop it. You watch from your sickbed as neighbours fall ill in the morning and are dead by evening. The physicians are baffled, the clergy are overwhelmed with last rites, and everyone is terrified. This is what epidemic disease looks like in a world without germ theory, antibiotics, or any effective treatments. The sweating sickness is particularly terrifying because it doesn't follow the usual patterns of medieval illness. It strikes rich and poor equally. There's no clear humoral explanation for who gets sick and who doesn't. It kills quickly, too fast for the usual bloodletting and purging treatments to be applied. Victims feel fine at breakfast, develop fever by midday, sweat profusely through the afternoon, and die before midnight. The speed and severity make it clear that normal medical interventions are useless. The physicians are confronted with their own impotence, though of course they won't admit it. The town's response is a mixture of medical theory and pure panic. Houses where someone has died are marked with red crosses. Families are quarantined inside, whether they're sick or not. The healthy are forbidden from leaving, and the sick are forbidden from entering other homes. Food is left outside doors by brave souls who then flee. Bodies are collected at night by designated carriers who are already assumed to be doomed. The social fabric begins to tear as fear overrides compassion. People abandon sick family members. Priests refuse to give last rites. Physicians stop making house calls. From your window, you watch a funeral procession pass, not the usual elaborate ceremony, with singing and prayers, but a hurried affair with a cart piled with bodies wrapped in sheets. The sweating sickness is killing faster than proper burials can be arranged. Mass graves are being dug outside town. The church bell that usually tolls for each death has gone silent because it would never stop ringing. Death has become so common that it's no longer individually acknowledged. People are just numbers now, statistics and a plague that no one understands. The physician visits you one last time, not to treat you, but to give advice on avoiding the sweating sickness. He's wrapped in multiple layers of cloth, his face covered, except for his eyes, his hands gloved. He won't come within 6 feet of your bed. His advice is familiar. Avoid bad air burn, aromatic herbs. Constantly don't eat fresh fruit or vegetables, drink wine instead of water. Stay indoors, keep all windows closed. This advice is not just useless, but actively harmful. Keeping windows closed in a hot, stuffy room actually makes respiratory infections worse, and avoiding fresh food contributes to malnutrition and weakened immunity. He also recommends carrying a pomander ball at all times, wearing specific gemstones believed to ward off disease, and reciting particular prayers. If you do develop fever, he says you must not sweat it out. Contrary to the disease's name, sweating is considered dangerous, a sign the humours are escaping uncontrollably. Instead, you should stay cool. Drink cooling potions and undergo immediate bloodletting to reduce the heat. These recommendations are the opposite of supportive care that might actually help, but the physician delivers them with absolute authority before backing out of your room, clearly terrified despite his professional demeanour. The sweating sickness epidemic reveals something brutal about medieval medicine. When confronted with genuine medical emergencies, when faced with diseases that kill too fast for their elaborate theories to matter, physicians become as helpless as anyone else. All their university training, their humoral theory, their astrological charts, their bloodletting and purging, none of it works against an aggressive infection. The death rate is determined by the virulence of the pathogen and the patient's immune system, not by medical intervention. In fact, patients who receive no treatment probably survive at higher rates than those subjected to aggressive bloodletting while already fighting off severe infection. Historians still argue about what the various sweating sicknesses described in medieval texts actually were. Some outbreaks might have been influenza, others hantavirus, others perhaps dengue, or other viral hemorrhagic fevers. The symptoms were recorded, but the causes remained mysterious for centuries. What's clear is that these acute epidemics exposed the limitations of medieval medicine more dramatically than chronic illnesses did. A slow disease allowed time for elaborate treatments and left room for claiming success when patients recovered naturally. A fast killer offered no such mercy. Your household goes into full protective mode. Doors and windows are sealed with cloth. Enormous quantities of aromatic herbs are burned until smoke fills every room. Anyone who must go outside for supplies wraps themselves completely and avoids speaking to others. Meals become simpler. No fresh food from the market, just preserved supplies from storage. The household shrinks in on itself, becoming an isolated island trying to wait out the epidemic. No one visits, no one leaves. You're trapped inside with your various medical wounds and ongoing treatments now, with the added terror that the sweating sickness might arrive at any moment. Days pass in tense waiting. You hear occasional cries from neighbouring houses, someone discovering a family member has taken ill, someone calling for help that won't come. You hear the death cart passing at night, its wheels creaking. Voices calling, "Bring out your dead," like some grim grocery delivery service. The town that was bustling and alive just weeks ago now feels like a graveyard where some corpses haven't stopped moving yet. Medieval medicine has no answer for epidemic disease except isolation and prayer. Then, after perhaps 2 weeks of terror, the epidemic burns itself out. The last few cases appear, the death rate slows, and gradually life begins to return to normal. No one knows why it stopped. The disease ran out of susceptible hosts. Seasonal weather changes affected transmission, random chance. The physicians claim their preventive measures worked. The clergy credit divine intervention in response to prayers and processions. Everyone is simply grateful to have survived. You've made it through 2 months of personal medical torture, and now an epidemic that killed dozens in your town. You're still alive, though scarred, weakened, and traumatized. The sweating sickness took your neighbour, the baker's wife, 3 children from the house across the street, and the young priest who used to pray over you. But you survived. Whether that's luck, divine favour, or simply the random nature of disease transmission, you'll never know. The epidemic leaves you with a new perspective. Maybe being sick isn't the worst thing. Maybe being healthy enough that physicians leave you alone is the real blessing. By week 10, you've reached a point where the local physician admits he's done all he can with conventional treatments. Your various wounds are slowly healing, your strength is gradually returning, but you're still weak, still suffering from the accumulated damage of 2 months of medieval medicine. The physician suggests something different, a pilgrimage to a saint's shrine where miraculous healing might succeed, where earthly medicine has failed. You're about to discover that in medieval healthcare, when science fails, and it fails often, religion steps in as the ultimate therapy. Pilgrimage is serious medical treatment in medieval society, not just spiritual exercise. Thousands of people travel hundreds of miles each year seeking miraculous cures at shrines, containing holy relics, pieces of saints' bones, fragments of the true cross vials of martyrs' blood. These relics are believed to retain the saints' power to intercede with God, to channel divine healing energy into suffering pilgrims. The most famous shrines attract crowds of desperate sick people, creating what are essentially medieval medical centres where faith replaces pharmacology. The physician recommends several options. There's the shrine of Saint Roch, patron saint of plague victims, about 3 days' journey away. There's the tomb of St. Godric, known for healing wounds and fevers, 5 days' travel. Or there's the truly ambitious pilgrimage, the shrine of St. James at Santiago de Compostela in Spain, months of travel but offering the most powerful healing potential. Given your weakened state, he suggests St. Roch as a reasonable compromise between accessibility and miraculous power. Preparing for pilgrimage is itself a medical ritual. You must first confess your sins. Illness is often viewed as divine punishment, so spiritual cleansing is necessary before physical healing can occur. The household chaplain hears your confession, assigns penance, and gives you absolution. You're provided with pilgrim's clothes, a simple tunic, a wide-brimmed hat, a walking staff, and a leather pouch for carrying bread and water. You'll also carry a small lead badge that proves you're a legitimate pilgrim, not just a vagrant, allowing you access to charity hospitals and pilgrim hostels along the route. But here's the reality of medieval pilgrimage for the sick. It's incredibly dangerous. You're already weak from blood loss, malnourished from restricted diets, poisoned by mercury, and covered in barely healed wounds. Now you're expected to walk 3 days through winter weather, sleeping in crude hostels, eating whatever food is available, exposed to every disease carried by other pilgrims. The journey itself might kill you, but that's acceptable in medieval thinking. Dying while on pilgrimage is a blessed death, better than dying in bed. And if you survive the journey and receive healing that's clearly miraculous, the first day of walking is agony. Your legs, weakened by weeks in bed, tremble with each step. The wound on your leg throbs with every footfall. Your feet blister inside your shoes. You're travelling with a small group of other pilgrims, some sick like you, others going to give thanks for past healing or to fulfill religious vows. Everyone walks in silence or quiet prayer, saving energy for the miles ahead. By evening, you're exhausted beyond anything you've experienced, and you've only covered perhaps 10 miles. The pilgrim hostel is a long, low building beside the road, maintained by a monastery as a charitable work. Inside, there's a single large room with straw mattresses on the floor packed with pilgrims. The smell is overwhelming: unwashed bodies, infected wounds, human waste from those too sick to reach the latrine outside. This is where diseases spread efficiently, respiratory infections passing from pilgrim to pilgrim in the close quarters. You lie down on a straw mattress that probably hosted a dozen previous occupants and has never been cleaned, just refilled with fresh straw occasionally. Dinner is bread, weak beer, and a thin soup containing vegetables and perhaps some meat. It's more food than you've eaten comfortably in weeks, and your damaged digestive system rebels. You spend half the night visiting the latrine, a pit outside with a wooden seat over it used by dozens of people, flies buzzing even in winter. By morning you're questioning whether this pilgrimage was a good idea, but turning back would mean admitting the journey was wasted, so you press forward with the other pilgrims. Day 2 brings rain, cold, steady rain that soaks through your wool cloak within the first hour. Wet wool weighs heavily and holds the cold against your skin. Your teeth chatter. The hole in your skull, which had been healing slowly, begins to ache deeply. Your mercury-damaged gums bleed slightly, leaving a metallic taste in your mouth. Other pilgrims are struggling too. An old woman can barely walk supported by her daughter. A young man coughs constantly, bringing up bloody phlegm. A child whimpers with each step. Everyone is suffering, but everyone continues. Giving up isn't an option when miraculous healing awaits. By the 3rd day, you're moving in a kind of trance, putting one foot in front of the other without conscious thought. Your body is operating on pure determination. The other pilgrims around you are similarly zombified by exhaustion and pain. Finally, late in the afternoon, you crest a hill and see it the shrine of St. Roch, marked by a church with a tall spire visible for miles. A surge of emotion hits you: relief, hope, desperation. You've made it. Now comes the real test. Will the saint heal you? The shrine church is crowded with pilgrims, some praying fervently, others sleeping against the walls from exhaustion. At the altar sits a golden reliquary containing a fragment of St. Roch's bone, supposedly his forearm bone, though historians note that if all the saint bone fragments in Europe were authentic, each saint would need a dozen bodies. You approach with other supplicants, waiting your turn to touch the reliquary and pray for healing. When your turn comes, you place your hands on the cool gold surface and pour out your desperation. You've been sick for over 2 months. You've endured bloodletting, skull drilling, cauterization, mercury poisoning, tooth extraction, surgery, and countless other treatments. You've walked 3 days in pain to reach this shrine. Please, you beg, silently, let there be healing. Let something finally work. You kneel there for what feels like hours, praying, hoping, willing miraculous intervention to occur. Other pilgrims wait behind you. Eventually you must move on, making room for the next desperate soul. You stand and nothing. You feel no different. No divine energy, no miraculous transformation. Just the same pain, weakness, and exhaustion you arrived with. The saint has not healed you. But here's the complex part: some pilgrims do report feeling better after shrine visits. Modern medicine would attribute this to placebo effect, the psychological power of hope regression, to the mean or simply natural healing coinciding with the pilgrimage timing. Medieval understanding sees it as proof of miraculous intervention when healing occurs, and as evidence that the pilgrim's faith was insufficient, or their sins too great when it doesn't. The shrine can't lose successes, prove divine power. Failures prove human unworthiness. You sleep in the shrine church that night, as many pilgrims do. In the morning, you begin the 3-day journey home, no more healed than when you left, but having fulfilled the religious prescription. Medicine has failed you. Pilgrimage has failed you. Your body is on its own now. You return home after 6 days of pilgrimage, weaker than when you left, but with something unexpected, a new perspective. While at the shrine, you met dozens of other sick people, all suffering from the incompetence of medieval medicine, all bearing scars from treatments that should never have been inflicted. A woman showed you where they cauterized her breasts to treat a cough. A man had been trepanned 3 times for recurring headaches. A child bore mercury scars across his entire body from a skin condition. You realize something quietly revolutionary. You're not alone in this nightmare, and maybe the problem isn't your body but the medicine itself. This realization doesn't come with fanfare or certainty. You can't openly question medical authority without being labeled foolish or heretical. But privately lying in your bed after the failed pilgrimage, you begin to notice patterns. Every treatment the physicians prescribed made you worse. Every time they left you alone during the astrological waiting periods during the epidemic when they were too frightened to visit you, improved slightly. The correlation is impossible to ignore once you start looking for it. Medieval medicine isn't healing you. It's systematically damaging you while claiming to help. You start refusing treatments. When the physician arrives and suggests another round of bloodletting to address your post-pilgrimage weakness, you decline. He's shocked patients don't refuse treatment. He explains patiently that your pulse indicates excess blood, that your humours are clearly imbalanced from the journey, that immediate bleeding is medically necessary. You thank him politely and say no. He leaves shaking his head, warning that you're risking your health by ignoring professional medical advice. You're willing to take that risk. The household servants are confused by your refusal. They've watched you suffer through 2 months of treatments, and now, when the physician offers help, you're declining. The household's wise woman tries her remedies, herbal teas, poultices, charms. These you accept not because you believe they work, but because at least they won't actively harm you. A cup of chamomile tea might do nothing, but it won't drain your blood or poison you with mercury. Folk medicine's greatest virtue is that it's usually harmless, just ineffective. Days pass without medical intervention, and something remarkable happens. You begin to actually heal. The hole in your skull slowly fills with scar tissue and bone. Your cauterization burns fade to permanent scars but stop hurting. Your surgical wound on your leg closes properly without constant interference. Your mercury poisoning symptoms, the trembling, the excessive salivation, gradually diminish. Your body, finally allowed to do what it evolved to do, repairs itself. The human body is extraordinarily resilient when not being actively attacked by medieval medicine. You start eating properly again, real food not limited by humoral restrictions. Meat, vegetables, bread, cheese, food your body needs to rebuild strength and restore blood you lost to countless bleedings. You sleep normal hours instead of following medical prescriptions about when and how to rest. You exercise gently, walking around the house, rebuilding muscle that atrophied during bed rest. These simple acts, eating, sleeping, moving, accomplish more healing in 2 weeks than 10 weeks of aggressive medical treatment achieved. But here's the problem: you can't share this revelation openly. If you tell people that you recovered by ignoring the physician, you'll be labeled ungrateful, foolish, or worse. Medical authority is backed by university training, ancient texts, and religious sanction, suggesting that trained physicians are wrong, that doing nothing is better than doing what they prescribe is social and intellectual heresy. So you keep quiet, letting people assume you recovered through the pilgrimage's delayed miraculous effect or through your body's natural humoral rebalancing. The physician visits one last time, examining you with evident satisfaction. Your pulse is stronger, your colour better, your wounds healing nicely. He takes credit for your recovery, explaining how the careful sequence of treatments he prescribed, the bloodletting, the purging, the mercury, the surgery, work together to address your humoral imbalances. The pilgrimage provided the final spiritual component needed for complete healing. His treatment plan was a success. You smile and nod, saying nothing about how you recovered only after stopping everything he prescribed. Historians still argue about how many people in medieval Europe quietly figured out what you've learned, that medical treatment often caused more harm than good, that the body heals itself better without intervention. Some probably did develop this skepticism, but couldn't act on it openly. Others remained convinced that medicine helped, even when it clearly didn't, unable to see past the authoritative framework. The majority probably never thought about it critically, accepting medical theory as unquestionable truth, the way we accept modern scientific consensus. You've survived nearly 3 months of medieval medicine, and you've learned the most important lesson: the best medical treatment is often no treatment at all. Your body knows how to fight infections, how to repair wounds, how to restore balance. It doesn't need humoral rebalancing or bloodletting or mercury poisoning. It needs food rest time, and most importantly, to be left alone by physicians who think they're helping but are actually hurting. The scars will remain forever. The circular mark on your temple from skull drilling, the burn scar from cauterization, the missing tooth, the surgery scar on your leg, the small circular bruises from cupping that never quite faded. You'll carry these marks of medieval medicine for the rest of your life. They're not badges of honor. They're evidence of survival despite treatment, not because of it. Every scar tells the same story: a physician tried to help and caused harm instead. You're left with a quiet, private knowledge that makes you an outsider in your own society. You know the medicine doesn't work. You know the treatments cause more problems than they solve. You know that sick people would be better off resting in bed with soup and water than submitting to bloodletting and mercury poisoning. But you can't say this. You can't change the system. You can only protect yourself by quietly refusing treatment and hoping others figure it out too. The cold you caught 3 months ago, the simple respiratory infection that started this entire nightmare, resolved itself within 7 days as colds do. Everything that happened after day 7 was iatrogenic injury caused by medieval medicine's attempts to cure you. If you'd done absolutely nothing from the beginning, just stayed in bed, drunk water, eaten soup and waited, you would have been fine. Instead, you nearly died not from illness but from the cure. Welcome to medieval healthcare, where the treatments are confident, comprehensive, and catastrophically wrong. You've survived it barely, and you're one of the lucky ones. Thousands of others don't make it through the medical gauntlet, dying with physicians standing over them, earnestly explaining which humoral imbalance caused death, while never acknowledging that their own interventions were the killers. But you made it. Scarred, weakened, traumatized, but alive, and you'll never trust a physician again. 3 months after that first headache, you stand at your window watching the town return to normal life after the sweating sickness epidemic. Markets are reopening. Children are playing in the streets again. The church bells ring for celebrations instead of funerals. Life continues as it always does, with people getting sick and physicians confidently prescribing treatments that don't work. You've become an observer now, someone who's seen behind the curtain of medieval medicine and can't unsee what you've learned. And what you've learned is terrifying in this world, in this time. Getting sick is dangerous, not because diseases are so deadly, but because the cures might kill you first. You calculate your odds of survival if you'd actually had something serious instead of just a common cold. If you'd contracted plague, real bubonic plague, not just the fear of it, the physician would have applied the same treatments: bloodletting, purging, cauterization, plus specific plague remedies like lancing buboes and applying poultices made from crushed emeralds or powdered unicorn horn, actually narwhal tusk, but nobody knows that. The mortality rate for treated plague patients in medieval Europe hovers around 70 to 90%. Modern historians suspect that many patients died from the aggressive treatments as much as from the disease itself. Weakening someone with bloodletting while they're fighting off a bacterial infection is essentially helping the bacteria win. If you'd broken a bone, the physician would have set it possibly correctly, as bone setting is one area where medieval medicine occasionally succeeds through practical experience. But then they'd bleed you to reduce inflammation, apply poultices that might introduce infection, and restrict your diet to bone-building foods based on humoral theory rather than actual nutrition. Compound fractures where bone pierces skin are essentially death sentences. Amputation might be attempted involving sawing through bone without anesthesia, then cauterizing the stump. Survival rate: maybe 50% if you're lucky and don't die from infection or shock. Childbirth in medieval times kills approximately 1 in 3 women over their reproductive lifetime. Not per birth over the course of multiple births. 1 in 3 women eventually dies from pregnancy-related complications. When labour goes wrong, medieval medicine offers horrifying interventions. Manual attempts to turn breech babies, often tearing tissue and introducing infection. Herbal abortifacients that are basically poisons. Prayers and holy relics. And in desperate cases, embryotomy, cutting apart a dead fetus inside the womb to remove it piece by piece. If the mother survives the failed delivery, she then faces postpartum bleeding infection and puerperal fever, all treated with, you guessed it, bloodletting, purging, and prayers. Simple infections are wildly unpredictable. A small cut can lead to sepsis and death within days, or it might heal perfectly fine with nothing but clean water and honey. Medieval medicine doesn't understand why some wounds fester and others don't, so treatments are applied randomly. If you're lucky, they'll use honey and wine, both genuinely antimicrobial. If you're unlucky, they'll pack the wound with dung poultices, or apply caustic substances that destroy healthy tissue along with the infection. The outcome depends more on luck than treatment. Respiratory illnesses, pneumonia, tuberculosis, bronchitis, are treated with chest cutting, bloodletting to reduce inflammation, expectorant herbs, and forced vomiting to clear the lungs. Tuberculosis patients are sometimes encouraged to move to higher elevations or warmer climates, which occasionally helps, but not for the reasons medieval doctors think. Most respiratory patients either recover naturally or die despite treatment with physicians, unable to tell the difference between helpful and harmful interventions. Mental illness presents its own horrors. Depression, schizophrenia, epilepsy, and other neurological or psychiatric conditions are attributed to demonic possession, humoral imbalances, or planetary influences. Treatments include exorcism, trepanation to release trapped demons, restraint in chains, beatings to drive out evil spirits, forced fasting, and massive doses of sedating herbs. Some patients are kept in monasteries or special institutions. Others are simply locked away by their families. The concept of mental illness as a medical rather than spiritual condition won't emerge for centuries. You think about all the people you know who've died young. Your cousin at 23 from fever, probably pneumonia or influenza, treatable in modern times with antibiotics and supportive care. Your neighbour's infant who died at 6 months from weak constitution, possibly a birth defect, but possibly killed by the aggressive purging prescribed for colic. The merchant's wife who died in childbirth at 35, her 4th baby. The soldier who returned from war with an infected leg wound and died despite amputation, screaming as the barber surgeon sawed through his thigh with no anesthesia. How many of them would have survived in a world with real medicine? Historians estimate that life expectancy at birth in medieval Europe hovers around 30 to 35 years, but that's heavily skewed by infant mortality. If you survive childhood itself, a significant accomplishment, you might live to 60 or beyond. but your odds of reaching old age depend largely on avoiding serious illness and injury, because treatment for either might kill you faster than the original problem. The healthiest people are often those too poor to afford physicians who recover or die based on their body's natural resilience rather than medical intervention. You realize with dark clarity that you survived not because of medieval medicine, but despite it. Your youth, your previously decent health, your body's resilience, these saved you. The treatments almost killed you multiple times. The skull drilling could have caused brain infection. The mercury could have poisoned you to death. The repeated bloodletting could have pushed you into irreversible shock. The surgery could have gone septic. Each intervention was a dice roll with death, and you won multiple rolls through nothing but luck. And here's the most disturbing part. Medicine won't improve significantly for hundreds of years. The four humours theory will dominate medical thinking into the 18th century. Bloodletting will remain a standard treatment into the 19th century. Anesthesia won't be invented until the 1840s. Antiseptic technique won't be developed until the 1860s. Antibiotics won't arrive until the 1940s. Generations of people will suffer through the same ineffective, harmful treatments you endured. Millions will die from cures that are worse than their diseases. The physicians will remain confident the universities will continue teaching humoral theory, and patients will keep trusting authority that doesn't deserve trust. You're living in a medical dark age and the dawn is centuries away. The best you can do is what you've learned. Avoid physicians when possible. Refuse aggressive treatments. Trust your body's natural healing capacity and hope you never get seriously sick. Because if you do get seriously sick in medieval times, your survival depends on luck, not medicine. The sun sets over your town and you watch people going about their lives blissfully unaware of how dangerous it is to be human in 1347. Somewhere right now a physician is bleeding someone who doesn't need it. A barber surgeon is drilling a skull for a headache. An apothecary is preparing mercury ointment for a rash. All of them believe they're helping. All of them are probably causing harm. And there's nothing anyone can do about it because this is the best medicine humanity has developed so far. You've survived 3 months of medieval medical care. You're scarred, weakened, traumatized, but alive. You probably wouldn't survive it a second time. Your best hope is to never need a physician again, to live quietly and carefully, avoiding injury and illness as much as possible. Because in medieval times, the most dangerous words you can hear are, "Don't worry, the doctor is here to help you." Those words almost killed you once. You won't let them get a second chance. And so, we close this long journey through the nightmare of medieval medicine, where good intentions met terrible understanding, and the results were often catastrophic. You've walked beside someone who caught a simple cold and was nearly killed by the cure bled repeatedly, skull-drilled, burned with hot irons, poisoned with mercury, subjected to treatments that sound more like torture than therapy. The most haunting realization is that none of this was malicious. The physicians genuinely believed in humoral theory. The barber surgeons thought they were helping. The apothecaries carefully prepared their remedies according to ancient wisdom. Everyone involved was trying to heal, working within a framework of understanding that was confidently, systematically, comprehensively wrong. Imagine lying in the darkness now, grateful for the simple gifts of modern medicine, that we take for granted: antibiotics that cure infections in days, anesthesia that makes surgery painless, CT scans that see inside our bodies without drilling holes in our skulls. Imagine the relief of knowing that a headache is just a headache, not a sign of demonic possession or humoral imbalance requiring aggressive intervention. Let yourself breathe slowly, deeply, feeling the comfort of your own bed with no physician approaching with a phlegm or a mercury ointment. Your body knows how to heal itself from minor ailments, something medieval medicine never quite grasped. The wisdom isn't in aggressive intervention, but often in patience, rest, and letting natural processes work. As you drift towards sleep, perhaps spare a thought for all those who suffered through centuries of well-meaning but harmful medicine, who died from cures instead of diseases, who never got to experience the simple miracle of effective healthcare. Their suffering taught humanity hard lessons slowly, painfully across generations. The room grows quieter now, the story fading like candlelight dimming, and you're safe here in the present where medicine has finally learned to do more good than harm. Let that comfort carry you gently into sleep. The story ends here. See you in the next video. Good night.